Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Agenda as presented.
Second?
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Ms. Csip, action plans.
Peterson and Dr. Marker and I are here and our secondary schools in our district. Each building achievement for all of our students to ensure that every student. Our third goal is attendance as it relates to our enrollment and see where we are at each building. In ELA, and it's the estimated proficient scores from Evaluate. And our scores, you will see they're consistent from last year. We will continue to build the stamina for our students in reading and rigor and find resources that make learning relevant for our students. We understand that our testing environment was a little different this year, but we are reporting out on Evaluate scores. This chart represents the scores of our 6th through 8th grade students in math, and we see that it's also consistent with the scores from last year. We've created modules, which are learning modules for ELA and math in middle school. Our middle school teachers, as well as our coaches, has worked together this summer and really created some rich modules for our teachers. And you will hear, and you heard last week, some of our principals talk about those modules, and I'm sure you will hear that again tonight. Really, there's also embedded formative and summative assessments in the modules that the teachers have found to be very helpful. This chart, this slide really summarizes the scores on Evaluate for cohorts of students, 6th through 8th grade. You will see in ELA there was an increase in math, a decrease in math. And our goal, of course, is to see improved student achievement in this area over time in ELA and math in all of our subject areas. Each building will discuss 3 to 5 action steps to improve the academic growth of students. And this slide represents the social emotional growth indicators for our students in middle school. And you'll see that there were no referrals, and 100% of our students had less than 2 referrals, of course. This slide summarizes the action steps that the buildings will talk about as it relates to our social emotional goals for their building. They will identify 3 to 5 action steps that will support the social emotional needs of our students, staff, and our families. This slide represents the college or career readiness estimated proficient scores from Evaluate. And of course, our goal is to prepare our students for college or career. And we know that algebra opens the door to many careers in science and medicine, serves as a foundational skill, and understanding algebra also puts students on track for college success. So no matter what students choose, it's important for students to know that algebra is a gatekeeper to higher level mathematics, and it's a required course for virtually every post-secondary school program. Our next slide, our principals will identify 3 to 5 action steps to prepare students for college or career. And our early childhood will explain steps to help or support our students as they transition to kindergarten. Our third goal focuses on attendance and enrollment. And you will see that enrollment is a little higher than last year. And as it relates to our proportional attendance, our 90% of students being in the classrooms 90% of the time, and feedback has shown that our secondary students are struggling with that consistent attendance. And when we looked at the breakdown of the day, our high school struggled with staying in school all day, and the end of the day, that's where the struggle is. In our middle schools is the first period or the middle of the day. But the schools will talk about the wellness teams and the action steps that have been put in place to reach out to families and support and give resources as it relates to attendance. So the presentations will be 10 minutes in length for each building, 5 minutes for questions, and the order of presentations are here on the screen as well. So we will start off with our School for Early Childhood Education. But before we do that, are there any questions? Okay. Thank you. Turn it over to Dr. Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm extra short, so. So this evening, I'm going to present the Csip Improvement Plan and Action Steps for the Rittner School for Early Childhood. This is some of our academic data related to students recognizing letters. And you can see the data from last year. And during this time, we were in-person learning. And then the data for this year, this was doing virtual learning. And as you can imagine, doing virtual learning and trying to assess students on some of these things is a lot more difficult. You have parents that are there, so it's hard when you're listening to your preschooler not identify A and you know they know A. So the teachers, did their best, but of course, we take it with a grain of salt with some of the data that we have just because it is in a different setting and it's a lot more difficult because you're not right there with the students. But this is the data that we have. A few things that we noticed about the data is that the percentage is a lot higher than what we typically see in the beginning of the school year with students when they're first coming in. And we attribute that to possibly the fact that a lot of the students who participated in virtual were returning students versus new students. Also, the fact that it's some inequity because there weren't technology provided to the early childhood. So for those families, if they had it, then they were able to participate and like the seesaw and different things like that. So that could mean that the social, economic, or at risk is very different than just what we would have with all of our students in person. So those are just some of the things that we consider when looking at the data, but still very happy with the data. This is students recognizing sounds. And again, you can see that there is an increase in virtual learning versus in person, but you still see right there with our Hispanic students that that's still very low. And then also looking at counting, again, you see an increase there. And looking at this data, it's like the achievement gap is completely different between looking at what we would typically see with some of our students if we were in person.
What do you attribute that to, Nikki? Do you have thoughts on that?
One of the things I thought about and the team looked at was thinking that a good portion of our virtual learners were IEP students. And so just thinking about, even though you can see the data is a lot higher for our IEP students, but particularly just those white students with IEPs, we think that that may have played a role in why you see those numbers being so low there. So some of the steps that we started to take or are planning to take to address just the data that we got from our virtual assessments. First thing is we will reassess our students in person after the first few weeks because we just feel like that's going to be more valid data for us. And it'll be easier for us to compare that data to any future data that we might have for in person. One of the things we noticed doing virtual learning is that there was a big difference or a huge gap between some of our staff members as far as how comfortable they were with technology and also how they could navigate in their skill set and knowledge there. So we are planning to, we already did it, but we're planning again now that we're back in person to just really kind of have a basic assessment of our staff to just see how well do they know Word, how well do they know different things that we need to know. We had a few of our paraprofessionals who were struggling with just some of the things via email, like attaching something in an email. And so some of that was very surprising to us, but they don't have to navigate those things in person. So our school improvement team wants to put some pieces in place to just kind of address that inequity and try to see if we can get all of us with certain basic technology skills that we think you need to be able to navigate and support our students and families. Another thing is our Ell Supports, and this is kind of tied to that equity piece you see there as well. is we found that we didn't have very many Hispanic families who were able to participate in virtual. Like, I don't know if you saw that number there, but it was like 3. And so one of the things we want to do is we're looking at some technology grants, because if we do ever move into that virtual realm, we really want to be able to encourage more of our Hispanic families to participate, because for the most part, that was why we didn't have a lot of them participate, because they didn't have access to technology. And we could provide other supplements, but what they were doing in Seesaw was very rich. And so for those students to not be able to participate in that, and for some families to know they wouldn't be, I think it kind of discouraged them from participating in the virtual program. A few other things that we're doing is we really want to kind of integrate some of the things we learned in virtual that we thought were really rich and great into our in-person program. So we just felt like that's such a great opportunity. We learned so much. We don't want to just put that to the side. What if we need to engage in that way again, and now we haven't used those skills? And then the other part is we just felt like, the teachers really felt like they had a better relationship with parents that did participate in virtual, because they were seeing them every day and they could see them through Zoom. And so a lot of parents, it wasn't like, well, I can't get my car to come up there. It was a lot more convenient to families. And so we're just thinking that we can have at least some Seesaw that we do and make available to all of our parents so they can participate in that. And then also still do some Zoom meetings, like, you know, maybe once a month there's an after-school Zoom meeting just for their class, so parents can talk, especially during this pandemic, because a lot of the parents can't meet and get to know each other in the ways that they would at some of the events that we have at school. So this is our social and emotional growth, and as you can see, we have no referrals. And we also look at that longitudinal data, and because we didn't have in-person, the district wasn't able to provide what our students were doing for the past year as far as referrals, because we always like to compare and see how our students are doing versus the rest of the students in the district, and we're having more students who have less referrals each time when we look at that longitudinal data. So even though we don't have any referrals, our team really tried to anticipate when we were thinking about going to in-person what types of supports our students would need, and we also did have to address some things while we were in virtual learning to support our students and our families. So as you can imagine, one of our concerns really was separation anxiety on that first day, because typically our parents can come in, they can walk students to their classroom, they can have some time in there to help those students adjust. So not just separation anxiety for the student, but separation anxiety for the parent. And so now they're not able to do that in that way, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, so there's increased anxiety and concerns. So we were talking through a lot of different things that we could do to try to make families feel more at ease, but also reduce just how long it took and how much trauma students felt between that separation from their parents and to coming back into in-person. And then you add on the fact that for some of those students, it's been so long that since they've been in any kind of school setting anywhere. But we were actually really surprised at how well it went for our students on that first day of in-person. I'm not sure if it's just that teachers were just more sensitive to that, so they did give that extra time at a distance, and we did talk through some different strategies. But I also think it was because parents did have to kind of make that break, and a lot of times, you know, it's hard for you because you want to give parents that time, but the longer that they're there when the student is upset, actually the harder it is for them to separate and break. So we really found that probably in every classroom, maybe there might have been one student who was struggling for a little bit. Maybe in the whole school there were 2 kids who struggled for an extended period of time. And I can tell you, that is definitely a different percentage than what we would normally have in person. So we were happy that we thought of some strategies, but also that it wasn't as traumatic as we anticipated it being for students to come back on that first day. Some of the other things that we did social and emotionally was we needed to provide a lot of supports for some of our parents in that virtual learning. For some of our parents, just talking to them about how to talk to small children about COVID and what's going on in the world, because that's some scary stuff, and we created virtual stories for families to be able to share with students, as well as a virtual story for when they come back to school, just talking about that transition and how things would look different at our school. My team put together a welcome back, what to expect video just for the early childhood, just because some things are different at our level, to try to help parents with that transition. We also had to talk through just some social and emotional supports while social distancing. Our students are very small, and so they typically get a lot of support. We're holding their hands a lot of times as they're doing things to help them calm down. We're giving them long hugs. And so even for the teachers, you know, we were trying to think of out-of-the-box ways to still give the sense of some of that nurturing and support while trying to social distance. So we talked through some different greetings and did some research on different greetings we could do with the students and hand gestures versus those big hugs as soon as they come in the morning. Even an air hug. So we just talked about different things we could do to just still support students and families, but keep everyone safe. We're still talking through some of the other things that we can do when a student has a meltdown, or when a student is eloping, to try to social distancing, you know, whether that's working in a team and kind of blocking students. Some of the things we typically do anyway, but now we're really having to be a lot more strategic and plan things out so that we can do the things we need to do to keep everyone safe and teach students their social and emotional skills, but, you know, keep us all safe in relation to COVID. For parental supports, besides the virtual stories and things that we did, we also talked a lot to parents about self-care. And a lot of the things that I said to my team when we were doing this is that I know this is stressful for you. You're doing a lot of learning. You're you know, figuring out some technology you didn't know anything about, and trying to do your best to support while you're still dealing with the things you're dealing with at home. But think about our parents. They're now like becoming teachers, you know, and they didn't plan on that. They didn't sign up and go to school, and they're scared. And so we talked a lot about the things that, you know, we did with them as far as talking about yoga and mindfulness to share those same type of resources with families, you know, just watching how much of the news you're watching, you know, cutting that back. So we gave families a lot of tips on things they could do to just deal with their own trauma while they were supporting their students virtually. So this is our action step plans in relation to us just getting students kindergarten ready. And PAT has still been doing virtual home visits for families via Zoom and other technology, as well as doing a modified screening. So of course they're not having students come in, and they typically take them through a lot of different things that tasks that they have them do to mark as a part of the screening. They're using a lot of what parents are saying, having parents do some things. So just like our virtual, it's not as exact because, you know, we're not having the students right there in front of us, but still wanting to engage families, still wanting to screen, because if they have a delay, we still want to be able to move forward and get those student supports sooner than later. Another thing we've been doing as well is trying to support some of our local childcare with COVID support. So a lot of the local daycares and things, especially when we weren't open, were very full. And so just sending resources that we got from the district, you know, to them to just keep them aware of things that they can do to keep the families that they're supporting in our district safe. So we've been over time just trying to build those relationships with local child care centers, because we know not every child 3 to 5 can be in our care. Would we love that? Absolutely. But we know we can't. So, but we can still have some role in supporting those families and those students by partnering with those local child care providers. I also recently just started an early childhood leadership cohort for the local early childhood leaders that are affiliated with districts in St. Louis, St. Charles County. So all of the leaders that are in a similar role to myself, where they partner with a school district, and for a lot of them, just like me, they're the only leader of early childhood in their district. And so a lot of times we're working in isolation, and doing some really powerful things, but maybe not as powerful as if we partnered together and discussed things we were doing, learned from one another. And so it's been really amazing. We have a Google Drive where we, especially during this pandemic, that's what really made us all stop and say, I know we're busy, but we all need to help each other figure this out. So everybody loaded up their in-person plans, their virtual plans. We had Zoom meetings like every 2 weeks. Now we're having them once a month. To just discuss some of the things that we're doing. And we have an email chain that is just so helpful, because when you're saying, well, what are you guys doing about masks? It's something you can just send out and get everybody's response. And you hear some new ideas. So it's been really beneficial doing that. And I'm really looking forward to learning a lot of new things that will help us at our level, and not just, you know, what me and my team come up with, but what that people are doing around our area to support early learners. This is our building enrollment. And this was doing virtual learning, the 98. Right now at in-person learning, we're actually at 90 students right now. So just a little less than that amount. And some of that is we are reducing how many students we have in each classroom to social distance and keep students safe. So we are, Doug Bray and myself and a few teachers and his team have put together a recruitment plan that we are working on to try to really get the word out about our program, because we do know that a lot of families are still looking for care. And you know, we haven't been open for a while, so we want to make sure that the word is out there. We're hoping to see enrollment increase, because we still do have some spaces, even though we are cutting down how many kids are in each classroom. And so these are just a few pictures that I wanted to share of some of the virtual learning from Seesaw. You can see Miss Linda with her students, you know, talking about science, talking about plants. Some of the students are reading to her, showing some of their schoolwork. And this is like a Seesaw picture of, you know, students building shapes. Our teachers had supply pickups where we just set some supplies that we felt were pretty safe, and parents could just come at their own time, like on a certain day, and just pick those things up, like out of the crate for their classroom. And so they did get supplies throughout virtual learning to be able to engage with the teachers in the lessons. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
You have 90 enrolled, but are some of them still doing virtual?
So her question was, we have 90 enrolled, but are we still doing virtual? We person.
So Nikki, you've had 2 days of in-person, 1 day for each cohort. Moving into next week, you know, you'll be 5 days in person. You're phase 1. You've had 2 days with kids so far. What's the biggest opportunity that you see so far with 2 days in?
As far as improvement, I think a few things. The biggest thing I think for us is figuring out that social and emotional piece and social distancing. Because again, we already do have a few students that are on our radar that we think probably will need some extra supports, and trying to social distance while doing that is definitely challenging. We also have 2 intense needs classrooms with students with IEPs that require them to be there a full day, when typically our students are there just half day. And so that's probably our biggest thing that we're looking at. And it's hard because you can think of certain things ahead of time, but you really do need to capture some time of us being in the school to just see what different things are coming up, what strategies people are trying that work and don't work, so that we can do more research. So I would say that's probably our biggest opportunity. And that's where we do the bulk of our work, is social emotional. So it makes sense.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Great to be here again with all of you. I'll be presenting the comprehensive school improvement plan for Rittner Middle School. Happy to be here in my 5th year as the head principal of Rittner Middle, but for those of you that know, this is actually my 10th year leaning into the work at our great school over on Marshall Avenue. So thank you again for the faith that you have given me to lead the building and my teammates. Some indicators here, some celebrations. We see that we're holding strong and even improving. This is not an ideal scenario, but our kids are stepping up to the plate and making things happen for themselves. Many of whom are alone at home, many of whom faced with the challenge of getting used to Google Classroom potentially for the first time. Much different than what we did in April and May for the 2 office hours at 8 o'clock and at noon. This is a full school day. And before I get any further into this presentation, yes, our administrative team worked hard over the summer to set a template for success. I can't say enough about my teachers, but the true heroes out here in this district are our kids, every day stepping up to the plate, a full virtual day. None of us in this room were faced with that challenge anytime in our K through 12 experience. And I think at a certain point this evening, I think we should all just stop and reflect on what is happening in the living rooms, in the basements, in the bedrooms, all over this district. Very, very proud of our kids. I will indicate, though, not very much of a surprise with ELA when you look at our Hispanic data, and it carries over as well into our math data. When we started to reach out to our families that were struggling with tech, struggling with our schedule, struggling with just general clarity, what is this, Dr. Rich, that I'm doing now? We saw a huge gap, for obvious reasons, with our Spanish-speaking families. And so we literally had to get to their homes. We've been utilizing the translating services coming out of the C&I department. Can't thank Rolanda Piggs enough. For several weeks, she's just proactively signed up a translator in our building for 3-hour shifts on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And believe me when I tell you, we are going to work with Rosie Morales, because we got to connect with our families and literally get to our families in their driveways to help them log on, figure out what's going on with their password. So I will tell you, not only do I own that data, but I'll explain to you in very real ways. Many of our Spanish-speaking families got a slower start for reasons that, we need to bridge that gap. The celebratory piece to that is we have bridged a lot of those gaps, and I have some hopeful attendance data you'll look at some attendance data that is concerning for Rittner Middle, and I'll own that data later in the slide. But we were shared some information recently about trends in our attendance data, and I'm proud to report at Rittner Middle, at the RVA, and at Hake Middle, you'll see a middle school program, 2 schools and 1 program. All 3 of our schools and programs are trending in a positive direction, and we've all made at least a 4 percentage point leap in our attendance, and that's because we started in something of a hole, especially with our Spanish-speaking families that just literally did not know how to log on August 31st. We have 8th grade data, a little bit of a dip here in math, but again, we'd like to see the gains when we can get them, and the understatement that I'll continue to share in a very challenging school year for our kids. So this is the part of the presentation that I have to own a little bit of an unorthodox approach. If you've clicked ahead in your slideshow, you will notice not only does this look very similar to my colleague Dr. Terrence Peterson's slideshow, we're going to tell you at this point it is exactly the same. Full disclosure, we gently lobbied to co-present. We understand the nature of this is that you would like to hear from me individually and then Terrence later, and we're okay with that. But we're also proud to let everybody know that there is no purpose this evening in having Dr. Peterson or I have any differentiation in our slides of action steps. There's calibration, there's collegiality, and then there's what Dr. Peterson and I and our administrative teams have pulled off over these last 2 months to coordinate the RVA and to literally be in lockstep with everything that happens at Rittner and Hake Middle School as we share teachers, as we share kids, as we share student incentive programs, as we co-plan our staff learning sessions out of necessity. So what you'll see me do tonight, and I want to be transparent before I move forward, I don't want to step on my colleagues' toes. Coin flip, I got to go first. So if you see me speak less to number 2 than number 1, know that my partner's coming up behind me, and he'll add a little bit more flavor to the points that I kind of gloss over, if that makes sense to everybody. What I am going to speak to clearly on this slide, though, is exactly what I just talked about, and is our organizational alignment. We were tasked at the secondary level to create a structure for the RVA. There was an idea that there were some things that we could hold off on until we moved to phase 2. but at a secondary level, and we learned this in real time, there were just some decisions that had to be made right away. So Dr. Peterson, myself, working collaboratively with Dr. Stewart, Dr. Adams, and Shanae McCoy, with constant stream of communication, proud to say that the RVA is in a great place as we move towards the end of the first quarter, when we open the year with a lot of question marks. My partner, his motto for the year at his school, we're flying this plane as we build it. That's a very real thing that we've experienced. So again, I won't belabor this because I've already spoke to it informally, but we are sharing kids and staff. And by sharing staff, I want to make sure that you're aware, Rittner Middle teachers moved this summer physically over to Hake Middle, and the same happened with Hake Middle School teachers moving to our building because of all the myriad of things that involve building the schedules for our two schools and the RVA program. Again, building schedules had to be calibrated. Staff meetings now have to be calibrated due to breakout sessions for our teachers. And I'm talking about ending meetings at the same time so RVA teachers can break out together. Our assessment, approach to assessment, excited to say that we're looking at a different way to approach the evaluate test to add meaning for our kids. That is an ongoing conversation that we cannot innovate alone. We have to do things together. And I'm proud to say that everything we are doing together, and happy about the changes that we're making. You know at this point, we are an ICU school. That is an acronym that stands for Intensive Care Unit Around Homework Help. Both of our middle schools share a database now because we share kids. So last year, Rittner Middle School teachers would go to the Rittner Middle School ICU database, place students on the ICU list for homework makeup. Now they need to dip into the Hake Middle School database and vice versa. Same with Tyler and attendance. Two different interfaces because we share kids. Our norms for pretty much everything that we do are the same. You may have seen the video where Dr. Peterson and I proactively got out in front of the Zoom bombing issue at the end of our first week of instruction. That was a collaborative effort to come together to give our teachers and our parents structures to keep our kids safe in this new virtual environment. We share each other's bulletins, and as we speak, conferences are happening with a structure that I'm going to let Dr. Peterson speak to a little bit more clearly in his presentation. As I said before, you'll hear more from Dr. Peterson on item number 2. And number 3, I just want to say there was no choice for our teachers this year to become tech experts. And a fun thing happens on the way to every teacher in our district being thrust into this new world. Anecdotally, one of our teachers that had always kind of self-deprecatingly claimed, that tech wasn't her thing. Now my teammate, Mrs. Weir, is sending emails helping her colleagues with things she's troubleshot. So that's the communication. Every day there's a new Loom video, there's a new tip or trick or shortcut. I know that my fellow principals can speak to that, but it's not something, to be clear, I'm not facilitating that unless you believe that I'm facilitating Gmail. I mean, it's just happening informally because it's a must, right? And so it's a good thing to see. Again, we won't belabor this point. We're moving away from referrals, but trust and believe through our wellness team that we are supporting our students when needs arise. The neat thing about not farming referrals out to the office is that our teachers, in conjunction with our principals and counselors, we got to figure things out. And like I said, it often gets figured out when we make those home visits and have those meetings with our parents in those driveways and on those porches. So the wellness team, as we share agendas, and as I said before, I don't want to step on my partner's toes here. He'll speak a little bit more clearly to the attendance team process that both of our teams share. I'm happy to speak, and as I've alluded to our SEB teams, our virtual interventions, aside from just home visits, sustained small group work. Students are checking in with their peers and a counselor or a social worker during their break times, having lunch bunch with our counselors, and they're showing up because, needless to say, they're craving that connection with their peers and connection with some of their favorite staff members in our buildings when you speak about the wellness team members, our social workers, our counselors. And an overall aspect of our Husky Pack partnership, many of you know that we have Husky Packs at the middle school. Those are AKA our homerooms. It's the first class of the day. Used to be a short 30-minute check-in. It is now a 50-minute class at the beginning of the day, and when we move to phase 2, it'll be another 30-minute class later in the day to check and connect and accomplish homework completion. We are serious about our goals to put connectivity with students first, engaging our students first. We are serious about academics. I don't want anybody here to misunderstand what I'm articulating, but in a very real sense, we're engaging our kids before we even attempt to dive into that numeracy and that literacy. Early on in the school year, screens were off. A lot of our kids were apprehensive. They didn't know their teachers. This new interface was cold. It was scary. Cameras are coming up. Students are leaning into the work literally. Relationships are being made across the virtual interface at all 2 of our schools and our program, the RVA. Algebra enrollment is always an indicator of college and career readiness. Excited to let everybody know that the show goes on in a virtual environment. Virtual field trips are being planned. As I said before, trust and believe if it's happening at Rittner Middle School. Mr. Berry and Ms. Sagahana, our shared counselor, Mr. Kane, they're sharing those best practices with Brad Black and Leah Jones. So both schools in our RVA program are planning virtual field trips, a North County Tech and a career fair later this fall. And we've already started our student leadership meetings. We're going to be conducting some Spirit Weeks later in the year, hopefully around Red Ribbon Week soon. And we are starting to get up and running with our student announcements, which were a hallmark of our work last spring. As I said before, it is my job to own that low attendance rate, and it is not where we want to be. But as I said before, you peek a little deeper beside the numbers. We started in a hole, and thanks to the wellness team, thanks to the efforts of our teachers connecting our students and building those relationships, there is a clear upward trend in our attendance from day 1 moving forward, and we're proud of that. So again, this is the lone year that you will not see. Of course, we do have pictures of our kids and things that are happening and screenshots, but I want to bring this point home, and I feel like I have. I've worked closely with Dr. Peterson in the past. We literally talk every day at least. We don't make moves without each other because we can't. We share a program called the RVA, and at this point in time, we share a staff of middle school teachers. There is no distinction between Rittner Middle and Hink Middle except for bricks and mortar street addresses. I'm proud of that. It's hard work, but we built a collaborative team over the 4 years that we've been running our buildings together. In this 5th year, COVID gave us a new challenge to try on, and I'm proud of the fact that I think you'll see when my partner comes up here, that tagline, 2 schools, 1 vision, that every once in a while got chuckles from us, that is very real. Our middle school program is in good shape because we're calibrated, our assistant principals are calibrated, our counselors are calibrated, and our teachers don't know the difference. 1 team.
So Brian, I'm looking at your attendance data. So you're at 57%. So you mentioned an upward positive trend in that attendance data.
Yes, sir.
What do you think is causing that upward positive trend?
The hard work of our wellness teams, the refusal to take knocks on the door with no answer, and just leave things alone. We returned to the house. Assistant Principal Alex Terrence made his 4th home visit to a student who was not logging on. Mom was being less than honest with us about her awareness of her students' work ethic. 4th time was a charm. Mr. Terrence and Officer Berkshire were able to get some movement from this family. Suddenly, these last 2 days, he's had perfect attendance. Kids are wanting to opt out. One of my favorite students in 8th grade told me very clearly, he said, Dr. Rich, I've learned in my bedroom, and that bed looks very, very enticing after lunch. I mean, it's real. And he is home alone. So you're talking about a 13-year-old that has to be his own advocate and his own self-motivator, and he knows he could take that afternoon nap and literally nothing would happen. But he also knows he doesn't want to fall behind in academics. I led with this. I want to hit it home again. Credit to our teachers, credit to everybody in this room that's led the efforts of this district. It's about the kids in this district right now. They are moving mountains, and many of them are doing it at their house, by themselves, or even watching their students while they work.
You know, I'm thinking about a part of the plan this year for health reasons. We've removed attendance sanctions for students. If a student is not, has symptoms, child needs to be at home recuperating. Do you hear students speaking on that? Do you think that's had a negative impact on your attendance rate, the removal of attendance sanctions? Or do you think this is just kids and families just navigating this new environment?
I don't, to be honest, Dr. Kilbert, I don't think that makes as much of a difference as what I'll continue to hammer home. These students are home alone. We have 11-year-olds that are suddenly being thrust into the world of alarm clocks. Full disclosure, Sandy Rich woke me up until I was in 9th grade. So I'm here to tell you, as a doctor and a leader in this program, when I say kids are doing things in this district that many of us cannot relate to, that's real. So I just think it's human nature, sir. It's hard, and they get tired, and they're disconnected, and they're lonely. And it's an easy way out. You take a nap. A lot of trends show that early in the morning for obvious reasons, and then an uptick right after lunch, because they're tired. So it's easy, you know. My buddy Jordan, he could have, you know, taken that nap this week, but he's had perfect attendance. But he told me, week 2, he said, Dr. Rich, it's hard. This is hard, you know.
Thanks.
What about algebra? Why is it so low?
Back to this slide. Algebra enrollment?
Yeah.
Yeah, so overall, Algebra 1 enrollment right now is a bit lower in the building because, frankly, because of the COVID loss. So we're starting some students in pre-algebra, and then we have an opportunity to keep an eye on those students, but there was some gaps in their learning, and I can tell you, not to digress, that is probably the biggest fear we have at the middle school level right now. Pacing is an issue, and you know, the longer we stay in this environment and the longer the pacing is elongated, teachers, for obvious reasons, are just not getting through the curriculum as quickly as they could with formative checks and live learning in the classroom. I give credit to all the teachers in my math department. They're doing a bang-up job. But where I'm at is the longer we stay in this environment, we need to make some tough decisions about 6th graders ready for pre-algebra and, you know, 7th graders moving up to algebra in the 8th grade year, and that's a tough pill to swallow. But you know, we're going to stay the course and do the very best we can to keep those kids moving in the right direction. But I'm here to tell the board the reality of our work, and that is one thing that we are keeping a very firm eye on. ELA, you know, science, maybe you don't get to the last unit. Social studies, as a former social studies teacher, you know, all too often it's, you know, the Civil War at the end of the year and the North won, you know, that joke. But there is no joke about gaps in math knowledge and how math builds, and I think everybody here knows that. Of all our pacing charts, that's the one we're keeping a very close eye on, and we continue to push because it's a push-pull. Our teachers are feeling like they're moving too fast at certain times because they're not getting that formative feedback that the kids are really getting it. So a good teacher's notion, let me slow down and reteach this, but because of the environment, if we don't keep moving, then the implications of that as we get closer to the spring are generationally impactful, and we want to prevent that from happening. We want to close as many gaps with the time we have with our kids as we can. But we already trust and believe we lost some ground in the spring.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking. I didn't want to gloss that over. That's an important concept. I will say, though, in the same vein, with Mandy Harville's leadership as our instructional coach, we got the right people on the right seats on the bus. Both departments at both middle schools, and Mandy Harville keeping an eye on the pacing and our weekly PLC meetings. But, you know, I know this is an issue because I stay in constant communication with her. And for us to be nervous about it already at the end of September, you know, it's an issue. So we're going to continue to keep our eye on that issue and not allow it to become a chasm for our kids.
I have a question regarding the hotspot access and internet access.
Sure.
Does that have an impact on any attendance? Have we looked at that, or does everybody at the middle school level have access?
Anybody that asks for one, as long as Fred Harlan continues to produce those pieces of hardware for us, we're going to get it to our homes. That was the vehicle for our home visits initially, getting kids connected. getting our families connected. It's been huge. And the more that we can use those, the better. And, you know, every day we get an issue about connectivity. We get an issue about, you know, internet being down suddenly at a home. And so we move to, you know, get a hotspot out to a family. And the wellness team, it's a team of 18 individuals in my building as well as Dr. Peterson's building. We take it to them. We get it out there and we take it to them, show them how to hook it up, and show them how to, you know, hook it up with their laptop as well or their Chromebook. So I hope I'm answering your question. It's massive. We wouldn't be where we are without that hardware. So I appreciate the board supporting us. It wasn't just Chromebooks that our kids needed. You don't get too far with Chromebooks if you don't have internet, and many of our families started the year without internet.
The other question I had was around your social emotional supports.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed that there are 0 virtual learning plans.
Currently, yes.
At the middle school level. Have you found that families are reaching out to you if they are finding that they need support for their children? And I just asked that because I noticed last week, like all of the elementary schools
Sure.
had virtual learning plans.
Sure.
A certain amount of people.
I think you'll see similar data at the secondary level when my colleagues are here at the podium. And what I would tell you is at this juncture, we want to do the best we can to get our kids connected to the 7:30 to 2:15 school day. We believe it's a matter of what can we do to make this happen. When you're looking at a virtual learning plan, at that point, it's an admittance that there's a student that, for a myriad of reasons, just is not going to be able to stay logged on and consistent with their learning. We do experience some students that are not consistently getting into some of their Zoom meetings, but then simultaneously they're finding an opportunity to get into their Google Classroom work, and they're completing it. And so Dr. Peterson, way back in June, he and I agreed, if we've got a kid that is not getting on to the Zoom at the time that it is scheduled, they're accessing the recorded lessons, and they're achieving at the rate that we would expect them to achieve, I believe that's akin to what we've been pushing in this district for a while. That's that independent learning plan for that student. We celebrate those students. And that's the benefit, as Dr. Kilbride pointed out. In a previous year, we would have had to, you know, report those absences in terms of those Zooms they're missing. Now, a kid that's missing Zooms and that student's not achieving, that's a different conversation. But we have students that we're aware potentially may not be able to consistently log into second and third period, but they have straight A's in those classes. Those are kids we celebrate, if that makes sense. Those are kids that are making things happen, and we recognize there's probably a good reason that kid is not in those particular periods, but academically they're making things happen. And again, credit to the C&I department with the expectation that everybody records their lessons. We have access to those lessons for them to watch at their leisure when it's available to them, and they're achieving at rates that are acceptable for us.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rich.
Thank you again. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for having me tonight to present. I would like to take the easy way out and just say ditto what Dr. Rich kind of reported, but I want to come over here and talk to you all specifically about some of the things that we are doing at Hake Middle School. Although we are very much aligned, what Dr. Rich said is a reality. Before we came up here, we just got off the phone talking about evaluate and our next stages of evaluate. So we are communicating day and night, actually. You know, I get on the phone with him in the morning on the way to school. He calls me in the evening on the way home. So we are literally locked in step every way in this process. So I am going to talk about some of the things. I'm going to focus on some of the things that he had expressed, but then also go into detail about some of the other things that he did not cover. looking at our data at Hake Middle School, we do have a positive trend upwards in ELA. You can see that in every group, every subgroup, there was improvement with at least 1 percentage point increase in higher. And if you can look in our Hispanic, we do not have the similar trend as Dr. Rich has. Our trend tended to be positive, in a positive direction. However, I would like to point out that we are experiencing some of the same things that Dr. Rich had said as far as the connectivity of some of our Latino families. Because if you can look at the number of our Hispanic families who have taken the evaluate data, you would notice that there were only 15 students who were reporting on. So although those 15 students trended higher percentage-wise, there were a number of students that we had to reach out on to make sure they were able to be connected. And so we're still doing that work. We're working with our EL teachers, we're working with our counselors, we're working with our wellness teams, and I can say that we have since had a positive report of some of those students starting to log in consistently. So we are experiencing some difficulties in that area. However, our math scores are not as positive as we would like to be, and sometimes I feel like I'm a broken record with math, and as we always come up with creative ways to increase in math, it continues to be a struggle for our building. We have improved in our white subgroup. You can see that there was a positive improvement in there, but in every other subgroup, there are some declines. I want to get into some of our action plans, some of our steps, some of the things that Dr. Rich did not cover. As he said, organizational-wise, we have, from the very beginning, we have been aligned. We have been in communication because we do have the RVA program. And I just really want to stress how important it is for us to be aligned, because we do share students and we do share teachers. I actually have 2 Rittner middle teachers who are actually coming to our building, my building, and they're operating from my building. So trying to balance staff and trying to do that, we felt that it was just a pretty good approach for us both to be, I mean, if you think about the middle schools have 2 principals. They have 4 assistant principals. They have 6 counselors. So 5 counselors. We're kind of Jeremy Kane. So we are really lockstep in everything that we do. I want to speak a little bit more to our instructional alignment. We started from the very beginning with the curricular modules. Our coaches came up with curricular modules for the core teachers for math, science, ELA, and social studies. And so those curricular modules have been there, and the teachers continue to follow those. And once again, for that total alignment, they are really working well with the curricular modules. They are also able to add their own spins and their own personal touches of instructional strategies to those curriculum models. But it was a really good thing that they had those curriculum models in existence, because it allowed the teachers to get creative with some of the things they were doing online. So our curricular modules are there. The curriculum is written for our Encore teachers who do share students. So you will see that some of our Encore teachers, they are about to cover their first quarter. The quarter is about to end, and so they have their curricular modules, and most of our Encore teachers operate from quarters. We do have some Encore teachers who operate in semesters and year-longs, but they have their curricular modules written for the most part from quarters. So they're going to continue to write those curricular modules and continue to adapt them to as long as we are in the online environment. One of the things that we really focused on last year, we're continuing that work, is the secondary instructional model. We have aligned everything that we do as far as our observations, our walkthroughs. They are in alignment with the secondary instructional model, because we want the teachers to know that this is what we expect and this is what we see as good instructional teaching and instructional practices. And so our instructional model, the secondary instructional model, is very much alive in both of our schools and in RVA. To the point that we are looking at our observations as we get on a line to evaluate teachers. They all understand that it is coming from the same vein that we kind of started that work with the secondary instructional model. We also continue our PLC supports. We have PLC meetings weekly, and in most cases, two to three times a week. Our coaches work with our POCs as well. As a nice byproduct, if I can report some positive things about our virtual learning, it did free up enough time for our assistant principals to get into some classrooms and to actually work with teachers from an instructional lens. Usually, they are kind of bogged down with discipline. And as you can see on all of our slides, we have 0 referrals to report. It doesn't mean that we haven't been working with students on individual things, but our assistant principals have been able to collaborate, connect with teachers, get into POCs, talk about instruction, and that was a nice byproduct of what we are experiencing through this virtual learning. We also have, of course, the non-negotiables of tech integration. There was PD that was delivered to our teachers from the very start. What we have found is that the teachers were initially overwhelmed because they had a lot of ideas, and it was great because they had a lot of ideas from the district, they had a lot of ideas from our PD director, our director of PD, but they were trying to consume it all, and then they did not have a clear course of action. And so when we talked to our teachers about in this situation, less is more, and so to focus on 2 or 3 platforms that you're going to deliver that instruction, and once you had kind of perfected those platforms, then go to other things. What we started to find out is that the teachers started growing in their instructional expertise almost organically. And so they started connecting to each other. They started making videos. I know from both of our buildings, we have, areas where teachers can submit ideas. A number of my teachers have grown to become instructional and technology experts to a degree because they have really learned, and they are not short of sharing. So anytime one of them come up with an idea or something how to manage online learning, they share it, they put a video out, they put a Loom video out, and then we have a database where we're collecting all this information. And we, at Hake Middle School, we even have what we call think tank sessions. And these are Monday meeting sessions where the teachers just get together, and I don't set an agenda, I don't do anything. The teachers just kind of get together and they collaborate. And they talk about some of the issues they're having with technology, or they problem solve, they come up with new ideas and they share. And so that has been another really positive byproduct of online learning. As I stated earlier, we have 0 referrals to report, so let's enjoy it now, because once we come back, I don't think I'll be reporting this again, but we have learned something from this. We have learned ways to really deal with students, because even though we have 0 referrals, that is not to say that we have not been dealing with issues of online, misuse of online. And so the way we have been dealing with them is on a personal level. Our parents and the staff, we are truly partners in this. And so we have been calling parents, and parents have been connecting with their kids and making sure that they understand the proper use of technology and the proper use of doing things. And so our home visits have kind of contributed to a very, very positive collaborative environment. So we have issues that we're dealing with. We dealt with a couple of issues today of some parents reporting some inappropriate use of technology. We made some home visits. Of course, things like hotlines, all of those things are still going on because, they are kids, they are middle school kids. So there are behaviors that we still deal with. However, our teachers are managing those behaviors in a different way. They're being very creative of how they address that. From the very beginning, we let the teachers know that this is all hands on decks. There is no way that you're going to be able to just write a referral and just say it's out of my hands. No, everything is in your hands. You're responsible for these students with their own line. And so our teachers have collaborated. They have worked with our parents. We have worked with our administrators. And I feel like this partnership is really strong because we all have a common adversary, which is to overcome this pandemic. So speaking of, I was going a little bit into the wellness teams. So our wellness teams, we have case management. I myself manage about 10 students for attendance. And so I go back to that all hands on deck. There is no one who's exempt from taking on some students under their wing and saying, what's going on? We need to get you in school. We need to reach out to have personal conversations. We are calling parents. We are asking them what they need. We have found out that some students do need Chromebooks or technology. They're missing technology, so we have been able to get them. We are in no shortage of being able to provide devices to our students, and that's another really positive thing, that we were able to furnish each student with a device if they need one. There are some students, of course, who are still using their own personal devices, but any students who do not have a device, we find it out very quickly, because we make sure that we have those attendance checks, and when we find out that they can't get on because of connectivity issues, we address those right away. We also, Dr. Rich spoke to this a little bit, we have also really invested in the Husky Pack partnership. The whole model of it takes a village to raise a child, we're kind of really focusing on that. We have an Encore or an SSD person paired up with a core teacher. And that partnership creates a dynamic where you have two teachers who are really focused on 30 or fewer kids. And what that does is that creates a family, and we even call it Husky Pack. They're a Husky Pack family, and that creates an all-around connectivity to those teachers and those students. And so those teachers, we talk to those teachers about knowing those students, all kinds of concerns with those students, and so they're dealing with those students daily. They see those students in their Husky Pack or their contact team if they're in the RVA, and they talk to those students and they make sure that those students are still doing well in all areas, emotional, academics, and as academics as well. Conferences. Something else that came out of our Husky Pack or our contact teams is that we had a structure of conferences. This took a lot of work because this was our first time, as Dr. Rich said, we were building this plane as we were flying it. So for us to figure out how to do online conferences, it was a lot of coordination, it was a lot of creation of links and things like that for the teachers, and they are going on as we speak. And I'm anxious to get back to the building so I can log into some of the sessions to see how teachers and students are connecting with conferences. But we do have conferences, and we had the teachers reach out, going back to those Husky Packs, and then they're able to schedule an individual conference with every parent. Now, some parents were not able to respond, but if they were not able to respond, we did have the teachers reach out to them personally to make sure that they had a time where they could come in and log in virtually and talk to two of their child's teachers. We are still making plans. We did a lot of preparation in the very beginning to get ready for phase 2. And as Dr. Rich said, we will have still those 2 periods of connectivity with our Husky Pack partners and the students when they come back, and they will have 2 opportunities to connect with those students throughout the day. Our algebra enrollment is a little down, but it is pretty much consistent. However, our proficiency, you can see, has dropped 5 percentage points. Some other things we're doing in preparation for college and career, we're carrying over some of the same things that we did that we had success on last year, which is one of those things is that have the College and Career First Fridays, where we talk about different opportunities for students that have been virtual. The process of being planned for virtual field trips, as Dr. Rich spoke to. We also are going to have ICU days where those students who are missing work or who need assessments, they are able to connect with those teachers and different teachers to get extra support on top of the support that they already have. So we'll have those things. Another positive byproduct of that is that we have monthly meetings that we've scheduled with our counselor teams and the administrators, and then we invite parents to attend. It's just an open forum to kind of attend and talk about and connect to find out some of the things that we're doing in these monthly meetings. And I am pleasantly surprised to say that we have had better attendance, interesting enough, than we did have on some of our PAWs or our PTO meetings. And so that has been one of those interesting byproducts, because parents can go home, they can cook dinner, they can log in from the comfort of their own home. And so that's one of those practices that we'll continue and we'll explore, because we know that we can connect to parents in a different way and allow them the opportunities to do some of those things they need to still do and still connect to us. We also, for the first time, were able to, in this platform, have separate Spanish-speaking sessions. And so both buildings have had great attendance with some of our Spanish-speaking families in comparison to the past. So we've had a full house, so to speak, in comparison to some of the other meetings that we have tried to have when we're in person. And I won't belabor the presentation by talking about what Dr. Rich said, but this video was just one of a couple of videos that we did. And so you can feel free to watch that video if you haven't already at your own time, but it's just a symbol of the unified vision that Dr. Rich and I have really worked hard on, and we're going to continue to work on, because we know that everything that we're approaching this year is going to be new. And we know there's going to always be changes, and we have talked to our staff, and we're preparing them for the possibilities, all of the possibilities that change are going to bring. And so we're going to still make sure that we are unified. We're unified as a team. We're fortifying our staff to be able to support our students. And we know for whatever situation comes, we're going to work to be prepared for it. Thank you.
You know, Terrence, I'm looking at the attendance slide, which is right before this one. And so currently attendance at 66%. What kind of trends are you noticing in your attendance?
We are noticing some positive trends. So we have gotten some trend data, and that was one of the things that I had requested when I was looking at the data, to see that. And so we have, as Dr. Rich said, we have seen jumps of 4% of higher. I saw the ADA, I think it went up to 90, and it was in the low 80s. And so I saw a recent ADA that was up in the 90s. So we are starting to see some positive trends in attendance. And I say I can kind of connect to the fact that the students are understanding this environment, and they're doing school, as I always say. So they're starting to say, okay, well, right now there's no change no time soon, and they understand that, but they are realizing that this is different from the spring, that this is a reality, this is their current reality. And so those, and with the wellness teams and the visits and all those things, we have been able to get some students logged in on time consistently.
How are the virtual walkthroughs done?
So they're done very much similar to how we would do a walkthrough if there's teachers in the building. The only luxury that we don't have is we're not able to see all of the students at a glance and kind of see all of the things that they're doing, but we will log in on the teacher's Zoom link, and we click into that class. The teachers, of course, admit us, and then we still kind of like follow our walkthrough form and sheet and do some of those things. So we're still looking for like learning targets. We're still looking for a student's understanding of what's going on for the day, and we check off a lot of those things that are aligned with the secondary instructional model. We're looking at the teachers, how they model, how they collaborate and connect with the kids, how they close. And so a lot of our walkthroughs and our evaluations are done very much similar to how they were done in person, but there are just a few barriers that we need to overcome, but they're going well.
So I have a question. It's really not just for you, it's really for everybody. But if you're having these walkthroughs and we're getting emails saying that this isn't going well, are you seeing that these things aren't going well, and what are you doing to fix them?
We have gotten parents, and we've had different parents reach out to us for different reasons about something that's not going on. There has not been consistent, like this certain teacher or something that's not going away consistently. We address those things as we have, and we have been into some classrooms, and there have been some tech problems, or the teachers have had the students work asynchronously for their time, or we're doing that. So as those problems come up, we just continue to address them. I would say collectively, we don't get as much feedback that things collectively are not going well. There are individual pockets of times where we have gotten reports from either parents or even students. Students have contacted us too. That's what Dr. Richardson said. Our student, he's proud of our students. I am very proud of our students because they have been responsible, very responsible. And there have even been some situations where some students have notified us and almost called out some teachers or something. So we're very proud of the advocacy they have established. And if we know one thing, this is building strong support, advocacy for our students, because they have to endure this. And as Dr. Rich said, none of us have ever experienced this in our lifetime, but our students have, and they're adjusting.
Okay, thank you.
Well, they have virtual field trips online, so you can go to different places like the St. Louis Zoo, for instance. So if there's something in the science curriculum that's about, animals or whatever, and so you can go to online, and a lot of places like the zoo or the science center, they have virtual field trips where you can go in and you can click on a link, and it can take you to different experiences through the science center or through the zoo. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening, Dr. Marker.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in. The data is not exactly what I was hoping for. The 73% participation rate is indicative of what we've seen from our attendance as well. We have kids who are routinely showing up, and then we have other kids that aren't showing up at all. And to echo what Dr. Peterson and Dr. Rich has said, certainly, as you can see looking at our data, we have more than 8 Hispanic students who should be in our 10th grade English classes. And we are working hard on a daily basis to connect with our kids. Thus far, with our wellness and attendance teams, we have made 855 phone calls, and we have done 165 home visits. I was out and took care of 4 visits today with Officer Miller. And although this data isn't where we want it to be, we believe that things are moving in the right direction and that our kids are working hard in conjunction with their teachers to be continuing on a daily basis to progress toward proficiency. Again, looking at this data, it is significantly worse than the ELA data for the algebra. Part of the issue here, and it's no one's fault, is that many of our kids that came to us out of the middle school because of the situation that we were put in on March 17th had no math instruction from March 17th until August 31st. And that absolutely created gaps. It's not an excuse, it's a reality. So I certainly don't want to try to hide behind this data. I would expect that when you look at it in October, that you will see some increases there, but I want to make sure that you understand that this data, that our kids are being tested on year-long concepts because it's the estimated proficiency that they'll achieve on the EOC. Some of these things they haven't been taught yet. So we are going to see increases in this data as we move forward. The September, October data will correlate with the January, February data. So when I come back in March, I would certainly expect to see significantly higher numbers than what you're looking at right now. Again, this is not what we want, but as Dr. Stewart said, this is the data that's before us now, and it's our job to move our kids from where they are right now toward significantly higher rates of being able to be proficient when we get to the EOC season here in May of 21. As you can see, we have a variety of things that we are doing in looking at academic growth. I am working closely, certainly not as closely as Brian and Terrence are working with one another. We don't talk on a daily basis, but we are routinely talking, trying to align so that we have an entire secondary model. Just the other day, we were talking about making sure that we could have a situation where families knew where to go and look for videotape lessons. So over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to be polling our staff, and then we're going to have specific locations in Google Classroom, on a school website, wherever, so that it makes it much easier for our kids, as well as our parents who are trying to support them, to know where to go to get things. So the secondary instructional model is not only important in the middle schools, it's also very important in the high school. We are working hard to move our teachers on a daily basis, and as a piece of that, we are using our department leaders as coaches, and we are going to have them out doing walkthrough visits. That's something that hasn't been done in several years here at the high school, and we are moving back to that because they are the content experts. I have highly qualified assistant principals, but some of them do not have content knowledge in the areas that they supervise. I'm hoping that those of you who are parents are getting my Monday messages. I try to lend a little humor to them, but I want it to be informative so that parents are getting the same information that all 4 grades are getting. We have kind of adjusted our model of our assistant principals dealing with their students. We've gone back to a grade level model, and you should be getting, if you have a senior, you should be getting something every week from Chris Isaacs. If you have, a senior, if you have a junior, something from Dr. Matt Schuler. A sophomore, something from Patricia Clausen, and if you have a freshman child, you should be getting something from Dr. Lindsay Hawkins. And it's information pertinent to your specific grade level. Again, there's no point in belaboring this, but I will say that our teachers are doing a very good job heading problems off in the classroom session, where if a student is acting inappropriately, they're simply moving the student into a breakout room, having an individual conversation with that student, and then moving them back into the class. I will say that in the walkthroughs and evaluations that I have done, there really has not been a lot of nonsensical behavior that would be typical acting out at the high school level, simply because many of the kids, there's no audience for them, really, like they would have in a classroom, so there's no reason to act out. As I said, I really have to give kudos to the attendance and wellness teams. They are going above and beyond. I mean, making almost 1,000 phone calls in the first 6 weeks of school is an awful lot. We are working as a collective staff to address our personal unconscious bias that we have, because sometimes what we see on the outside is certainly not who the person is on the inside. Our game changers certainly are addressing that, as well as our leadership team, and that's something that we want to continue to foster in our kids. And we do have time during the course of the week where we are connecting with kids around their mental health and doing routine mindfulness with our kids. Again, I certainly would have hoped that we would see increases in our data. The fact that we left in March, many of our seniors would have taken one final ACT, and that 89% post-secondary results, there were kids that we had lined up that were planning on coming in. It didn't matter whether it was the practices for Chaffetz, whether it was practices for going out into the stadium, whether it was coming in and doing essentially across the stage here in the auditorium. We would have had significantly higher numbers than that 89% if we would have been able to have a graduation ceremony, because that's an expectation, and I will tell you that we have a system in place now where we are testing sophomore kids for their ASVAB, and in doing that, it counts as a state test. The upside is the students are too young to have a military recruiter automatically contact them. So it's a win for us. It's a win for kids where they're getting to see a test, a standardized test, without having to have the military reaching out. And again, we are standing on our heads trying to increase this graduation rate. Tavonda Palmer is an invaluable resource. What we really need to tackle at this point is working with our staffs, making sure that we are accounting for every student that has an F and putting plans in place that we are addressing those issues in the moment. And I will tell you that my assistant principal team and I, on a monthly basis, are having conversations with every teacher in our departments to address a student that has an F and what the plan is in place to help move that grade. I'm not saying that we're going to have 0 Fs. That's an unrealistic expectation. But I will tell you that we are going to have significantly fewer than what we've had in the past. As far as looking at Plan 2, we have divided our kids up into red, yellow, and green categories, where kids that have greater than 19 and a half credits are green, because those kids are well on their way. We certainly don't let them to their own devices, but they don't need as close monitoring as kids who have that 19 to 16, and that's our yellow category. And any student that has less than 16, those are our kids that we are in serious danger of not graduating. We are working very closely with Dr. Adams and the Husky Academy team to have plans set so that we are able to be recovering more and more of those kids. And we're not putting them in situations. In the past, when they weren't successful here, we would send them to Husky Academy. But we weren't setting them up for success because they didn't have everything they needed when we sent them there. So we are striving to have things in place so that when a student leaves the Rittner High School and goes to the Rittner Husky Academy, that we are able to move them through judiciously and not create log jams for kids who are behind them, or to have them feel a lack of success and then stop attending. We also have increased our work-based learning opportunities, and we are striving to use our registrar, which is a new position here, to track down those kids who, after 8th grade, withdraw from the school district. We're working daily to track them down and find out where they are. Again, our attendance isn't where I want it to be, certainly, but there were some issues early on in the school year. We had kids who were still in Mexico, and when we couldn't get devices to them, I mean, I would have loved to have gone to Mexico to get them their device, but it just wasn't a reality at the time. And now they are back, and I absolutely expect, especially with our wellness teams and our attendance teams getting out and making those contacts, to see increases. I know that there was a question about virtual learning plans. Right now, ours is at 0. I expect that to increase, because one of the big things we're seeing for our seniors is that we have some kids who are having to work during the school day to support their families. We have other kids who are busy playing the role of teacher in their house for their younger siblings. They're doing their work, but we're not getting the attendance that they deserve because they're not logging into their classes. And we have an expectation that has come from the district leadership team that if a student is not checking in, that we are not marking them present. They're doing the work. Just like Dr. Rich and Dr. Peterson has said, that we're just not able to mark them present. So we will be seeing some virtual learning plans begin to show up here over the next few weeks as kids are communicating. That's a hard thing to say, that I can't be part of my school. That's a hard thing to say. Get to hear myself in real time. And many of these pictures are not of our current kids. They're from our seniors. Actually, there's one person in the lower left-hand corner that you may not recognize. Yeah, but you do have a theater expert in our midst. So, I mean, that was actually an accident. That wasn't pandering in any way. It was just that I wanted to make sure that we had our theater as part of our slide experience.
I'll be taking it as a
Any questions?
Dr. Marker, I have a question.
Yes.
So you, on your action plans, you talk about your alignment for graduation and putting kids into the different colored zones. So that way we can make sure that their senior year we're helping them through and getting them to the right spot. What plans do you have in place to start to, I don't know if it's start or to, what plans are in place for our freshmen or sophomores so we don't have those kids at the senior level?
It's an excellent question, and what we have done in going away from having the alphabetized monitoring of kids and going to grade levels, we've created grade level teams where they are specifically working. Dr. Hawkins has our freshman team. She has 5 people that she has surrounded herself with where they are having specific conversations around kids who are struggling academically. And really, right now, it's academically and attendance-wise. The behaviors aren't there because we don't have them here. And as I said, really, we're not having a lot of issues behaviorally online. But we had 110 seniors who are in the red right now. In looking at the freshman to now sophomore class, there were only 37. So there are some things that we're doing right. And with going to this model where it's a grade level cohort with a team surrounding those kids, I believe we'll have significantly fewer kids by the time we get to senior year having issues where they are in that red category where the only option is some sort of an alternative option to their graduation path.
Thank you.
You said that we have kids that must work during the day to help parents or the family.
Yes, sir.
Have we thought about having an afternoon school, an evening school? Classes offered at the times where they're not at work.
Thought about it. Obviously haven't put it into action yet. Another option would be to work on, we're piloting right now with one of our science teachers. We don't have a virtual academy like K-8 has, but we are working through a plan that for our kids that need to be asynchronous for all of their classes, to be able to have options for them so that, because the last thing we want is for a student that's in that situation that has to work and can't do work outside of class to then say, no thanks, I want the MOVA option, and then we're losing that $6,500. So we are absolutely thinking and preparing that when we move to phase 2 that we will have options for kids.
So you mentioned that the walkthroughs right now were not necessarily happening by the curriculum leads. Do you have a time frame on when they're going to start doing those?
Monday.
Monday?
Yeah.
And then what about the conversations that I heard you say that the teachers, your vice principals are having those conversations with the teachers for students that have Fs, and they're monitoring that on a monthly basis. Is that also going to a conversation with the families, engaging them, or is it just the conversation with the teachers?
It's a trickle-down effect where certainly we want to have the conversation because initially it sits in the student's lap, but it also sits in the teacher's lap as a partner here in school. But absolutely we should be reaching out to home. And I will tell you that although my teachers are hesitant, as many teachers are, in making the phone calls, with having the expectation that on the 5th consecutive absence that you need to be making that phone call home. Necessity is the mother of invention, and they are practicing with one another. They are coming in and having conversations with administrators with them, and they are beginning to become more comfortable, because when we frame it as we want to partner with you for your child's success, that's a whole lot better received than your child's not, because that's an indictment on the job you're doing as a parent. And we've seen significantly better results when we are trying to partner because we care about your child. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Okay, thank you to Dr. Davis, Dr. Barker, Dr. Rich, and Dr. Peterson. As you can see, the collaboration with our secondary principals have been very high. Our middle school principals have collaborated very regularly as it relates to Rittner Virtual Academy, I would say several times a week. And you can see from all the presentations, the common practices with collaborating with parents, staff, and students around social emotional learning, academics, and attendance. We will continue to take steps to build a positive climate and culture in our buildings with our staff, students, and families. You can see that professional development has centered around technology, support for our teachers and staff, and also the secondary instructional model, ensuring that there's modeling and that research shows that helps with our lesson planning and the ability for our students to understand they're taking those steps to make sure that that lesson plan includes those steps. And also coaching in our secondary buildings, making sure that our staff has support with coaching and social emotional learning as well. So those are some of the common practices that you heard. Do you have any questions in regards to any of the presentations?
I don't have a question, but I'd just like to say thank you to all the principals and to all their staff for being thrust into thinking outside the box and really trying to do your best. I know that there's days that, you know, I've talked to some teachers and they get into a lesson plan they were so excited about, and then it fails and they're like, what do I do? You know, so thinking on their feet so quickly to make those changes. I know it hasn't been easy, so I just thank them for their dedication to the district and to the students in trying to help them to learn.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Doug. I was just about ready to ask you. So while Doug sets up our flag, if we could just take a 2-minute recess. If you need to go outside and have a mask break, you can go do that, or a potty break that bit.
How are
There is a person up here, I have to find him, who wrote a book about he went to and pretended to be about it, and I don't know how he survived and didn't get killed. He graduated with my dad. So this is the real thing. So these are people that graduated from Rittner, and then they went on to do like special things in their life. You guys were very patient, very patient. I should have given them a different time. I feel terrible. Did you eat dinner? You guys hungry? You sure?
I know it was nothing, but it really did mean something because I was kind of part of it. So it's greatly appreciated.
All right. Are we all back? Are we all back? Don't sit down. Don't sit down. If I could get everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'll do that.
I'm like, don't sit down. Yeah. All right, would our students like to start us?
Uh-oh, you dropped your paper.
You guys start us?
We're gonna do the pledge.
The pledge
Start the
first.
Pledge of Allegiance. Ready?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. So, before we get started, I'd like to introduce our School of the Month, which is our Rittner High School students. So, I will turn it over to Ms. Metz.
Thank you.
So I'm only going to talk for a second because they are the stars of the show. So I have 4 students presenting to you all, but 2 of them have video presentations for you. They had other obligations. All 4 of them will be talking about things that are very important to them culturally. It is Hispanic Heritage Month. That goes through until October 15th. So that's what you will see here tonight. So I will let them introduce themselves, but Paula is right here, and she will talk with you guys first, and then we'll have a video presentation from Scarlett. Gabby is here to present to you, and then a video presentation from Astrid. And then just one of my favorite quotes to live by with my students. Just, do you know what a foreign accent is? It is a sign of bravery.
Hi everyone, it's Paula. I'm gonna talk about a 2-year-old from Honduras. Cacique Lempira, his nickname Indio Lempira. He was born in Honduras in 1499. He forged the mountains of Seleque, where the Lencans Indians live. The name Lempira comes from the words Lempa era, which comes from 2 words in the Lenca language. These words mean Lord of the hill of the mountain. Lempira died in the middle of the peace talk. There were 2 men of the Herzog in front of Lempira. The 2 men were Spaniards to kill Lempira. Lencas are surprised by the death of their leader. He fought the Spanish during the 15th during the Spanish conquest, and one of the wars had an army of almost 30,000 soldiers. He fought against whoever to defend his people, and it was a successful war. Honduran people celebrate Indian Lempira. That is on July 20th. That means we celebrate in honor of him. Some kids and adults wear loincloths like him. That is traditional that we always celebrate the 20th. In Honduras, una empira is like $1 bill in United States. I'm inspired by him because he was one of the best girls of Honduras. He always showed his love for country, and I'm stuck on how he died because he has to just done a pack of the peace. Now every year we celebrate in honor of him. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Scarlett Ramos. I'm from Honduras, and I want to bring you some information about my culture from my country. The topic is music and rhythm in Honduras. Next. Okay, I want to start talk about styles of music. The first one is punta. It is the most famous rhythm in Honduras, dancing by the Garizuna ethnic groups and native of the coast. But dancing in every part of Honduras is the rhythm that represents us as Honduras. It's the most important rhythm in my country. It's really famous in all the places, in every place in Honduras. We have different ways to dancing. Different ways like slow or really fast, but we always dance punta. Next. The second one is folklore. Folklore is the old rhythm from Honduras that we learn by dancing in every school or college. It is a great part of our culture. Folklore is dancing. We every year in our school we have a festival for represent every kind of song, because it's really important that we have in our culture, in our college or high school, we have folklore classes. It's really important. It's like a PE classes here, but we have a folklore classes. Oh, marimba. Marimba is a slow rhythm created with an instrument called marimba. This sounds like a style of fun. 4 people are needed to play the marimba. It's a really good rhythm, and it's really important because we have something called memory dance. Is when the people that, like my grandmother, my grandfather, usually go for dance this kind of rhythm. They really enjoy this party with marimba. The most famous artists are Csip. Csip is an international famous group of punta. All the musicians are Garizunas. They are from La Ceiba, Honduras. It's an important city in Honduras. It's really famous. They play, write, and sing their music, singing in Spanish in their own dialect. Next. And the other ones are Pilo Tejeda, Polache, and Guillermo Anderson. They are really important singers for our country. Next. Marimba Ursula is the most famous marimba in our country. We have many marimbas. Every city have their own marimba, but the most famous is Marimba Ursula International. The instruments. These instruments are created in our country, like flauta, like concha, marimba, maracas, and caramba. Caramba is a really good instrument. I don't know how they create that, but it's really famous to have a specific sound that no another instrument can have it. Instruments are an important part in Honduras music because in our country we have our own instruments created by many people with scenes from the sea, trees, and accessories from the nature, and the rest are handmade. Next. In Honduras, the H is not mute. We have this phrase referring to the fact that H has no sound. In Honduras, it has it. With the melodies and completed, we have a really good effect. When you are Hondurans, the rest of the world usually call catrachos. So we always say feel free to be catracho.
La conquista de Tenochtitlan. Hello everyone, today I'm gonna talk about Tenochtitlan and how it be conquered. In 1519, two powerful empires met for the first time. They were the Aztecas and the Spaniards. The Aztec Empire is how we call them, but the real name was Mexicas. The Mexicas were an indigenous group of Mesoamerica. They settled in the Valle de Mexico, an island called Texcoco, at the beginning of the 14th century. Their languages was the Nahuatl, and their religion was polytheistic. They had gods like Quetzalcoatl or Huitzilopochtli. The human sacrifices were practiced in homage of different reasons, like to feed the sun, or bring the rains, or anticipate battles. Around 1325, they founded the most important city, Mexico Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan had a population of more than 200,000 people. The Aztec Empire was called Tlatoani. Moctezuma was the Tlatoani in that time. A Tlatoani is a kind of king. The Spaniards, the king from Spain at that time was Carlos I. In the Nuevo Mundo, how they call Mesoamerica, his dominions were concentrated in some island and coast of the Caribbean. The governor of Cuba, Diego Velázquez, began to organize an expedition to conquist and considered one of his officers to lead. He was Hernán Cortés. Cortés became friends with people in the towns around Tenochtitlan that would help him to destroy the Aztecas. On the land where Tenochtitlan was completely destroyed, and they will Mexico City. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Astrid Cruz Lopez. I'm going to explain about my food from Honduras. The first food is the baleadas. The baleada is one of the most popular from Honduras. So, this food, you can eat this food in breakfast or dinner. This food is in everywhere of Honduras since 4 a.m., 5 a.m. Some ingredients are the flour, water. When you need the flour, you need the water. So baking soda, oil, beans, cheese, cream, eggs, avocados if you want. So this food. So this morning I ate this food. The baleada are different types. So if you want medium or big, it depends. The price is the baleada. So if you want, you can watch the video and explain really good the steps. Second, the food is pollo con tajadas. It's really good. In Honduras, say pollo chuco. It's just a peculiar way of naming pollo con tajadas. So, if you see, have many things. So, you can eat in lunch or dinner. So, my family make this food in Sundays or in the weekend. This food is in everywhere of Honduras. It is one of the most popular foods in the country. So, this food make in your house, someplace. The ingredients have chicken, you can fry the chicken, green banana, cabbage, you need to cook, pico de gallo, in my country say chimo, not the pico de gallo. Mustard, ketchup, mayo, this is for aderezo. We say aderezo in my country. You can look in the video, the color beige, like sauce, is aderezo. Soup of chicken, if you want, or soup of tomato, right? So, this is my little explain about my food. Honduras at home.
There's one like short addition where she just explains how proud she is of, to be Honduran, and she explains a little bit about the photos, but yeah. So that's it. Thank you. You guys. Do you guys have any questions for us?
So how are you celebrating? You guys can come out.
So that's an interesting question because Hispanic Heritage Month is not well known to a lot of our students because it's a very American thing that we do. And so for some of them, it was news to them that there was a month devoted to heritage from Mexico and Central America and South America. So they were a little bit confused about that question at first.
I can understand why, because they
Yeah.
celebrate it every day.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Do they celebrate it on the 20th of July?
Do you celebrate Indian Day? Do you want to answer that?
Yes, we every year celebrate 20th in honor of him, but we celebrate at the school, normally at the school.
So you didn't get dressed up like in those pictures?
Yes, like some photos, yeah, we wear that.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your heritage with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Ms. Metz. Okay, moving on to 1.07, report of closed session. I'd like to report that the Board of Education met in closed session on September 10th, 2020, for the purpose of discussion of personnel agenda items. Moving on to 1.08, we have public comments time. Before I get started, we have some people here that would like to come speak, but I have a letter that I'm going to read. Since we are still virtual, I would like to make sure that if people don't feel comfortable coming in.
The other thing is the people that are here to speak, I just wanted to remind you that you'll each be called up. I have your yellow slips here, so I will call you up, and you will have 5 minutes to speak to the board. So is the sound okay? Okay. I have to hold the letter up a little because I can't see with the mask on. Okay. This is addressed to whom it may concern or to the Rittner Board of Education. Good afternoon. I would like to address a few concerns with the virtual learning that Rittner has applied to take place in teaching our children during this pandemic. Even though this has just been put into action, it has already become an enormous stressful situation for the parent and the children to work with this program. My children, which are in Booter Elementary, from the very start, have had nothing but confusion, unreliability of the teacher, and are not fully equipped, nor have any navigation learning to operate through the virtual learning program. Examples. They were to do an art session. The teacher posted a picture to be colored and drawn on and asked to print this out. The district, knowing the numbers itself on how many Chromebooks were distributed through families that had no capabilities of doing the virtual learning, how would you expect these children or families to be equipped with printers? And when they informed the teacher of this, they were instructed to draw the picture first off the screen, then do the assignment. As this learning process is not already difficult enough for them, then after this is to be done, the finished assignment needs to be sent to the teacher in a picture or PDF form to be turned in. When the children asked how to do this, the reply was, I know there is a way to do it, but I personally don't know because I don't use a Chromebook. So have your parent take a picture of it and then send it in from that. This is completely absurd. First, if the children are using a Chromebook format, the teacher should be using the same format as they are to know the navigation of the system if any questions arise. And on the note of the art lesson, why in this time are we so concerned with the learning of art, gym requirements of certain dress to be in their own home and keep them locked down basically for almost 7 hours a day in this unreliable learning process. We should be teaching the essentials at this time, math, science, English, reading skills, etc., and cutting this time of confusion they are already experiencing down. The teacher moves along too fast for them to keep up. The screen confusion is extreme. They have not been able to chime in to get help. It is like a free-for-all, then directed to do a task, then muted with no capabilities of being able to ask for help from the teacher, which is not present or responding. The kids get very upset because they cannot follow the procedure, and to be honest, I don't think many adults could even work with this kind of teaching. And I know for sure if I had a choice, would absolutely not want to. My main concern is the accountability of my child held by the school. If this system is not correct, worked with nor streamlined, and has accessible help from teachers and the staff, and staff not wanting to just push the children through this at a rate that they cannot keep up and follow, I will not accept a negative marks or accountability. I think that's supposed to be any negative marks or accountability by the district on my children. There is absolutely no way their learning, assignments, etc., can be graded and recorded accurately at all. I don't know how this all will play out, but already this learning program is off to a catastrophic start. I think their days need to be shortened with only essential learning at this time, till possible a grasp gets put on this system to operate at an easy understanding level. Or the district simply does not start the school year till they are physically allowed back into school to learn, which is the absolute best solution. Or you mail or have pickup options for physical packets of work and a turn-in operation of those packets with online access to acquire a teacher's help. Whatever the case may be, this current situation, whoever voted on this process, it is a complete failure and adds an extreme amount of stress to these children, as if they are already not stressed out enough by the restrictions that are currently in place in general, with lack of seeing friends, having normal play and activities, not experiencing their own birthdays, sleepovers with friends, play dates in parks available to them. They have to deal with this extremely difficult process. Also, another experience to add, my son, which he is in high school so far, has had his teacher showing up a half hour or more late to his own teaching class every day so far. But this is a whole different set of problems with his experience, and I will write on that topic at another time. We are still paying tax dollars to the district while they have had a lengthy time off of school and are not physically in school. I would expect my tax dollars to go to a learning experience they can at least work with or remotely temporarily suffice. This simply does not. I will leave my concerns at this time to end here. I will write again as more rises. I hope there is a change. Thank you, Christopher Eichmeyer. So the first person I have is Sean Zimmer. Sean, do you want them to come to that? Okay.
I just love being first. Not really.
Hello, Mr. Zimmer.
Hello, how's everyone today?
Good.
Not bad. Tired. I work too much. Basically, I just wanted to say, I know what a hard job everyone has with dealing with this pandemic and the decision that you guys have to make for everyone. But I do feel that keeping the children home as much as we have has not been the best thing for them, socially and emotionally. I think that there have been a lot of challenges for everyone. I mean, I know we all still, as far as the world's getting back to some sort of a new type of normal, so parents aren't home as much as they were when this first started. Personally for myself, I work 2 jobs. I'm hardly ever home. My wife works during the day, so my 2 kids are at home because they have to be, trying to navigate and do this with basically not anyone there to help them. So my younger one is always asking his older sister for help. She's getting frustrated because she can't focus on her stuff. The teacher's getting frustrated. And it's just a roundabout, keeps going. With everything going on and doing this, I think it's a better option to possibly try and get them back in some sort of in-person learning as soon as possible. I don't know what else to say. That's about it.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Debbie Wiesler.
Thank you for letting me speak to you all tonight in person. The virtual thing has, been the new normal, but this is really nice. The data in St. Louis County for ages 4 to 19 fully supports having kindergarten through 12th grade back in their buildings for in-person learning. COVID is not a concern for ages 4 to 19 when the survival rate for these kids is 99.97% of those that are infected, and only a very small percent are even contracting the virus. The students, as of tonight, have been out of school for 205 days, which is far too long to be away from the structure and routine school provides, the positive influence of their teachers, and face-to-face learning. Your goal as a school board, I know, is to get them back into their buildings, so I believe delaying that any longer will result in significant damage to kids' social, emotional well-being and their academic success. The longer they are out of school, the more difficult it will be for them to return. You must start somewhere, and the district has a phase 2 plan. I am aware that virtual learning is going well for some students and families. However, those of us who have always wanted the option of in-person learning are being ignored and overlooked. We expressed that desire back in July when the district sent out a survey. The fear of what if someone gets sick must be overcome. There are too many problems with continued virtual learning for the 4th through 12th grade students. I have mentioned before in letters I've sent to the board members that students' mental health is being overlooked. You cannot assess mental health well over Zoom or Google Meet or whatever platform they're using. Yes, teachers can check on students individually, but how many teachers are truly doing that? Kids should not be isolated from their peers, teachers, activities, athletics, social events, and clubs. There is a mental health crisis overwhelming pediatric emergency departments. If you think that the silence of parents and students means they're doing okay, you might find out otherwise if you looked into their well-being. Silence is usually a sign that they are not okay, they're feeling apathetic, or they have just given up. The silence should be alarming to you. Many school districts in our area have taken a proactive approach discussing and making plans to bring back middle school and high school students. You may be aware that Parkway, their board, unanimously voted to bring back their high schoolers last night in a board meeting. Some districts have already moved to phase 1 with their elementary schools, and with small class sizes, due to many elementary students in our district staying virtual, this would be a very simple transition for our elementary students. Rittner has not communicated anything to parents since the announcement of the K-3 return on September 23rd. Board members owe parents and students transparency about your plan for the rest of the grade levels moving to phase 2. All of the data proves it is very safe to do so, and you need to give parents and students that option of in-person learning that you have denied us since the beginning of the school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Sarah Phillips Morgan.
Well, yes, I agree with the comment of it's nice to be here and speak to you in person. I'm here tonight to implore you to return our kids to in-person learning. I am the mother of a 4th grader who just missed the cutoff to get back into school. And I've been really involved in school in the years that he's been there, and I have loved him being at Rittner. He's a student at Marvin, gotten to know the staff and the faculty, and have always been very proud of the fact that he has a good school to go to, and telling everybody, you know, like, I love our elementary school, our teachers are great. But right now, I feel that the district is ignoring the call to adequately educate our children. The district's motto is every student, every day, and I feel like that is completely being ignored now. There are some students that are doing well virtually, and that is great, and I'm glad they have an option, but not every student is, and those students that aren't are being ignored. It is not every student every day right now. I also hear about Rittner Pride and getting out there and being a leader, but we're not being a leader, we're sitting around. I did a very quick search, and I know more has happened since then. I found at least 6 districts in our county are going back to 5-day learning. They've either already started or will start it soon. Through elementary, and 2 of them
it sounds like a third one is going for middle and high school as well. One district is doing 5 days for K-2, and there were 5 districts that already have a hybrid plan for elementary and middle school students. And Rittner is sitting on their hands saying, no, we don't want our students back in the classroom. I think parents are being ignored. Many of us want our children in classroom. I'm glad there's an option for those that want to do virtual, but we have no option right now. And we see the effects on our children. I just this week had to send a message to my child's teacher saying, he's having a meltdown, I don't know when he'll be back from lunch. Because he lost it and started yelling and even left the house because he is not doing okay. He might be doing well on his reports as far as his exams and his assignments, but he is not doing okay. He has grown by being in school. He's quiet and shy, child naturally. But I see him in the classroom. He has become a leader. He has become confident in himself. And all of those things are slipping away from him. I feel like the recommendations are being ignored. The superintendent came with a recommendation to go for all of elementary school, and that was pushed aside. Recommendations from the county is to return to in-person for all pre-K to high school. And I don't hear anything. There has been no communication of any plan to try to get our older kids back in the classroom. And even various groups tell us the harm of keeping them out. I sent this to you a month or two ago. From the CDC, it says the harms attributed to closed schools on the social, emotional, and behavioral health, economic well-being, and academic achievement of children in both the short and long term are well known and significant. Further, the lack of in-person education options disproportionately harms low-income and minority children and those living with disabilities. And we know that represents our district. And the data is being ignored. An over 99% survival rate. Our particular area actually shows better rates than other parts of the county, yet they are going back to school. I did a quick search of influenza versus COVID. For those 0 to 4 years, there have been 35 COVID deaths, but in 17 to 18, the flu deaths were 115. Nothing was close for that. For our older kids, the COVID deaths were 394, and that same year, the 17 to 18, the flu deaths were 528. You might say those are similar, but did we close the schools? Did we tell kids, your education's not important if you're not doing well virtually? Well, tough luck, you have to deal with it, do better? No, we kept them in school. And actually that number is a little more significant because the COVID cases were 5 to 24-year-olds, and the influenza cases were 5 to 17-year-olds. So it was a bigger group, and the numbers were still lower. All of this is being ignored. I feel like our children are being ignored. They are not okay. And I'm asking you to do what you were elected to do, to educate our children. Every student, every day. Every student, my student, their students, every student needs a chance to learn and grow. And I'm asking for the school board to articulate the clear criteria why we are not going back and why there is no plan or discussion that I've heard of to get these older kids back, and what specific criteria you are looking for that you can make that decision, because we are in the dark. I love my school, but I have looked at what I need to do to unenroll him if I need to keep him at home and just do a different setting. I have looked at private schools. I do not want to do that. I want to keep him here. I want to be proud of my school district. Please get our kids back in school. Thank you.
And the last yellow slip I have is from Mr. Eden.
Good evening. I wanted to just take a quick opportunity to thank the Board of Education for all of what you have done in the last couple months. I know that there have been comments, and you're not going to make every person happy all the time, and you have spent countless hours going back and forth, having conversations. As an employer from somebody in this district, I'm watching one of my employees that I have now had to quarantine for 14 days because a teacher in his building tested positive. because his student or his child was in that classroom, as well as all of a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classrooms are now quarantined along with all of those parents. I'm now canceling work and I'm canceling calls because I don't have the manpower. So I understand, I think that everybody sitting here, without a shadow of a doubt, believes that the best place for our children is in the classroom. But I wanted to thank you for looking beyond just right here, right now. We are in a district that a lot of our students live with elderly grandparents. So yes, we are looking at ranges of 4 to whatever that have a overcoming rate, and they're going to be okay. But who's to say that that grandparent is not? So, thank you.
Those are all the slips I had. Is there anybody else that did not turn one in? Yes.
I just wanted to say that in comparison to, so I have a 2nd grader at Crafts, and he's got a cousin who's also in 2nd grade over in Troy. And whereas at our schools, yes, it's all day, but the teachers are there and they're helping them and they're working with him. Whereas my sister's child, they like give them work and they have like 1 class meeting a week, and she literally is having to figure out how to teach her son. So I think in comparison, I think Rittner's doing an awesome job at teaching our kids, because it's not making the parents have to be teachers. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing what I think is a much better job than some other districts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for your comments. We truly appreciate them. All right. Moving on to our reports, I will move on to 2.01 for our President's Report. I am very proud to announce that the Rittner High School student newspaper, The Pepper Box, received the International First Place Award from the International Quill and Scroll Society. Our student newspaper received a Quill and Scroll First Place Award only one other time in the last 11 years. We are very proud of the student journalists who worked diligently at developing high-quality news, features, and editorials that were complemented by excellent photos and graphics to tell their stories during the very challenging 2019-2020 school year. Our student newspaper was competing with student newspapers and magazines from across the country to receive this honor. So I'd like to give them applause for our wonderful Pepper Box. Congratulations on that first place. Moving on to 2.02, we have our superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Lonis. Board members, I'm proud to finally honor in person the Citizens for Rittner's Future Committee at our board meeting tonight. We've tried to honor these citizens in person for several months, but unfortunately we were unable to do so. This committee was the driving force behind helping to pass Proposition S, which was back on June 2nd. Board members, if you recall, recently we sold the first portion of those bonds, the $19.5 million. We sold the first half of those bonds, and we're looking forward to getting further down the road on Prop S bond issue projects. The ballot initiative Prop S overwhelmingly passed after receiving 80.4% of the vote, and this was in the middle of a pandemic. I'll admit that when we first stopped, when the election was canceled in April, I wasn't sure that this thing had a chance. But the committee proved me wrong under the leadership of Jerry Nolan and a lot of people that I'd like to recognize here shortly. I'd like to say thank you to all of the members of the Prop S committee. I've been in this community now since 1999. I've been a teacher, a principal. It's my 9th year as superintendent. I've had 2 children while serving this community. Gone through new lives and passing in my own family. And the thing that keeps me here are the students and the people that are in this room. This is an amazing community, even when there are different perspectives about how the work should be done. Every single person in this room is extremely valued because you're willing to stand up for what you believe is right for kids in this community. I'd like to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I'd like to ask the members of the committee to stand when they're recognized. So the chair, and we'll hold our applause until the end, please. So the chair of the Prop S committee, Mr. Jerry Nolan. The treasurer of the Prop S committee, Ms. Michelle Clover. Now these are members of the committee. We've got a large number of them in attendance here tonight. Member of the Prop S committee, Dr. George Alban. Member of the committee, Ms. Tara Burleson. Member of the committee, Mr. Rob Eaton. Member of the committee, Mr. Dan Hall. Member of the committee, Ms. Mosley, Ms. Leah Latham Mosley. Member of the committee, Ms. Rhonda Olson. Hi, Ms. Olson. Other members of the committee that were, Ms. Butcher is here. Member of the committee, Ms. Melissa Butcher. Other members of the committee who were unable to be with us tonight, Ms. Joni Clark. Also, Mr. Ken Crowder. Are there any other members of the committee that I didn't recognize? So board members, Prop S was historic. It was a historic moment in the history of this district. 80.4% yes vote on this zero rate change bond issue that allows us to do the housekeeping to keep this district and the facilities the point of pride of this community that they are. Board members, I ask that we give this group a standing ovation. Thank you all for your work. So board members, each of the members of the committee received a commemorative coin. You received one of the coins as well. Those coins were mailed out to all of the members of the committee. Thank you all for being here and for your commitment to this district. Board members, there's another person that I'd like to recognize this evening as well. Dr. Stacy Alban Wilson. I'm very proud to honor Stacy. She's achieved master certification through the MSBA Certified Board Member Program. The program was established by MSBA and it recognizes school board members who choose to complete additional PD, professional development requirements, beyond the 16 hours that are required by the state of Missouri. To achieve master certification, board members must earn at least 24 additional training credits, read 2 books related to school board service, attend at least 2 MSBA regional or statewide events, and also write a brief essay relating their study to their board service. Have in my notes that Dr. Thomas also received master certification. This was earned back in 2002. Congratulations to Stacy. Proud to present you with this plaque from MSBA, and perhaps more importantly, proud to serve the students of the Rittner School District with you. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Kilbride. Dr. Thomas, your MSBA report?
All right.
Would you like the microphone, or are you?
Oh, we're good, right?
Yeah, you're voiceless.
I think you can hear me. Doug, do we have the film, or should we go with no film tonight? All right.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's Board Report for the month of October. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the recent 2020 MSBA Annual Conference in cooperation with the Missouri Association of School Administrators, where nearly 800 school board members and administrators gathered virtually this year to learn the latest about issues having an impact on their local school districts and to improve their leadership skills. One of the general session speakers at the annual conference this year was the director of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Robert Redfield, who joined the conference from his office in Atlanta. Redfield encouraged conference participants to open school buildings, but he added it must be done in a safe and sensible way. He said it's in the public health interest to get back to face-to-face learning when possible, since schools provide many important services to children in addition to education.
People don't realize how many of our children actually get mental health services in the context of school. They don't realize how many get nutritional support. They don't realize the importance of school in recognizing the sadness of child abuse. They don't realize the important psychological impact that it has for children to be able to interact with other children in the safety of a school that's doing this safely and sensibly.
He added, when school leaders are making decisions about in-person school, it's important to understand the community spread of COVID-19.
And a majority of the individual students that have been diagnosed in schools across our nation, they didn't get infected in the school. They actually got infected in the community. So one of the critical things that I keep asking people who want to help control COVID in schools is to do everything you can to control the infection rate in your community. And that's quite dynamic, county by county.
Dr. Redfield said the CDC stands ready to provide technical assistance to school districts as they navigate this challenging time. He called the coronavirus pandemic the most significant public health crisis that the nation and world have confronted in more than 100 years. During her remarks to conference participants, MSBA President Linda Daugherty from the NICSA Board of Education said school board members and administrators have risen to the occasion as leaders in their school districts during the COVID-19 pandemic, often making difficult decisions to allow education to continue during the new school year.
You probably haven't heard the words thank you very often during the past few months, but I'm here today to say thank you. Thank you for your service to your communities. In school district after school district throughout Missouri, school board members and administrators have shown what true leadership is all about. I could not be prouder than I am now to call myself a school board member. Now we have more issues before us, not just challenges, but real opportunities to move our school districts forward, to be innovative, and to truly have an educational system that meets the needs of all students so they can be successful in their futures.
She added, it has become more apparent than ever that our public schools play an essential role in our economic recovery and in thriving communities. Missouri's 2021 Teacher of the Year, Darian Cockrell, was part of the 2020 MSBA Annual Conference. He is a physical education teacher at an elementary school in Lindbergh in St. Louis County. Cockrell says Missouri is fortunate to have so many high-quality educators in districts throughout the state.
Students are telling me every day how excited they are to be taught by the best teacher in the state of Missouri, but I have to quickly remind them that I am just one of a large group of amazing teachers that we have here in this great state, and that all the students in this state are extremely lucky to have amazing teachers who have the love, the passion, and support for everything their students do to make sure that they are successful.
Like many educators this year, Cockrell has taken his talents to the virtual realm by creating high-energy instructional videos to help students stay motivated and active during remote learning. The 2020 annual conference concluded with a panel discussion featuring previous Missouri Teachers of the Year. One of them, Melissa Grandel of the Fordland School District in southwest Missouri, said teachers throughout the state are doing amazing work under stressful and demanding conditions.
The teachers in my district and across the state have been truly incredible. I think parents would be amazed at the hard work and the hours that teachers have been putting in to make sure every single student gets exactly what they need this year. Without a doubt, it is definitely one of the most difficult times we have faced in education, but it's also so exciting because educators are being incredibly innovative and they're solving problems and finding ways to meet inequities like never ever before.
MSBA's Delegate Assembly met virtually during the annual conference to vote on the position statements that will form the basis of MSBA's advocacy work in Jefferson City and Washington, D.C. for the coming year. Among the new position statements approved by delegates was one supporting a change in the foundation formula that decreases reliance on student daily attendance as the basis for state funding, an issue that has arisen during the coronavirus pandemic. Another position statement adopted by the Delegate Assembly seeks to close the homework gap through federal legislation and funding to address the technology needs of students, including broadband internet capabilities for school districts and communities. Every school board belonging to MSBA is eligible to send at least one voting delegate to MSBA's Delegate Assembly. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
One thing I don't think they mentioned was that for school board members here and for our staff, the sessions that you might not have gotten to see because of conflicts or you wouldn't be able to get to them, they will have those on their website until I think it's June of 2021, so that we can continue our education and continue seeing what happened on this weekend. That's part of our knowledge base and how we can see what others are doing, others are presenting. So I encourage everyone that can to take time throughout your week or weekend, sit down and watch one of these sessions and share with us later on the things that you think are innovative or important. The rest of the time, in this virtual world where everything is being communicated now with email and such, keep watching out for those opportunities that both NSBA and MSBA will send out to us. Virtual schooling, virtual session. I probably get 3 or 4 every week for opportunities for me as a board member to grow and learn. So I would encourage everyone to keep an eye on those, as well as watch both of them for our we'll say the political atmosphere that's going around both in our state and in our national governments, because MSBA and NSBA are both advocates for us locally and nationally. So if you want to keep up on things, just keep an eye on your school's emails or wherever you're getting these emails, and if you see of anything of importance, I would say, I guess, email them or forward them to the rest of us, so if we miss them, we can keep up with you. And Madam President, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Alden for the special school district.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, I'm going to take us back to September the 14th. I went to the Special School District Governing Council. It was a Zoom meeting. It's amazing to see how much, it's almost been a month, so there's been so many changes from point A to point B, so to speak. So that's going to be one of my curiosities, just is to see how the hybrid learning and how everything's going with D. Burns and our kiddos, K through 3. But starting out with this. All right. Update on the return to school was pretty much their forefront of the conversations that they had on the Zoom. At that time, both North County and South County technical high schools were at 100% distance learning. I'll have to get an update on that to see if things aren't changing, because it seems like things are being a little bit more motivated to trying to be in classrooms.
What's interesting is they do have programs with the North and South County Technical High Schools where they can have remote opportunities for getting certifications, which is wonderful. They also have a Tech Tuesdays speaker series, and they've established a partner district CTE advisory with one representative from each district, which is good, so at least they're connecting with every district within St. Louis County. St. Louis School District, or SSD schools, started the year 100% remotely. They partnered with technology to provide devices, hotspots, and training for students and families, and they also had their own meal program. Next up. Distance learning plans. This is reiterated from my last meeting, and it still pretty much holds true now. Lessons activities are based upon the student's IEP. Communicating the needs of the student and how it needs to be addressed include blending and virtual learning. Completed by a case manager in consultation with SSD teachers, general education teachers, and service providers, and they're reviewed every 2 weeks. Distance learning expectations. This was something new that I really did appreciate that they had added to their presentation. Families are signing secure communication consent for virtual instruction. Case managers set schedules for students. Assessments will be given to provide evidence of learning aligned with course expectations. Grades will be issued based upon student performance on activities and assessments, and student attendance in virtual sessions and the completion of learning activities will be monitored. And so for me, this is so important because they went from originally saying that there wasn't much that they were going to do when it came to virtual learning to really putting a lot of thought into the process and really working with the districts, working with our teachers and parents to try to provide as best as they can a virtual learning experience for children with IEPs. And last but not least, they did give a snapshot of Rittner. And I have to say that this was actually based upon 2019 instead of 2020, because this was the last bit of information they had gotten in. There are 1,293 students who live in the Rittner School District that receive special education services from SSD. 20.7% of the students who attend Rittner schools receive special education service. It's kind of interesting because I know that I had talked to Dr. Kilbright about this before, where they were trying to lower it down to 13%. Because it's a high number, but in all honesty, I do believe that many of our educators working with all of their SSD, that is probably an accurate number for the kids, because I know that they really do work hard to be able to provide services for our kids that really do need those, the services.
Dr. Allen, can you state that number again?
20.7%, and they're wanting it to be 13 when they try to look across the board for all the districts. That was one of the things that they were talking about at the very beginning of last year. Oh, thank you. And it's hard to see all of the little annotations on here. So if you start from the 12 to 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock position, that's autism at 156 or 13.3%. Going from the 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock position, the next one over is emotional disturbances, 108 or 9.2%. From the 3 to 4 is intellectual disabilities, 104 kiddos, whereas that's 8.9%. The yellow is language impairment, 55 at 4.7%. The little slice is low incidence or other. The blue at the very bottom are other health impairments, 233 or 19.93%. The orange on the left is specific learning disabilities, 266 or 22.75%. The purple is speech impairment, 138 at 11.8%. And then rounding up to the noon position is young child with a developmental delay, 88 or 7.53%. And that's the end of my report, but I really do want to focus on, with my next report next month, into terms of what advances and what we need to be doing to really help our children with IEPs and special needs when we start heading back into the classroom. So if you have any questions. If not, that ends my report.
I do have a question, Stacy. What is low incident other? What is that?
That's a good question. I was thinking that too. I'm probably going to go back and I'm going to ask. Steve Burns probably knows. Do you know?
So, yeah, low incidence, so like visual impairment. So what are those things where there is a very low incidence of students in the county that have those specific disabilities? Julie, other diagnoses that fall in the low incidence category? Visual impairments?
Yeah, visual impairments. What did they have? Hearing impairments up there too?
Visual, hearing, like sound, auditory processing disorders. Like, it's a low incidence when you compare to the other very large categories, AU, specific learning disability, other health impairments. So.
I'd be interested to know how many of our IEP students are also high risk. And, you know, if they need to be virtual, how we're handling that too. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Alvin. All right, moving on to our business items, we have 3.01. And I would like to say, Ms. Wiley, I think you always come on our longest ones.
It seems like that a little bit.
So I thank you for learning a lot about Rittner.
That's okay, no problem.
Mr. Smith and Ms.
So
Wiley.
I'm very happy and proud to be joined by Erin Woolley from Overland. She is the Director of Parks and Recreation, and she and I have partnered together for a few years now, and she has done a wonderful job of bringing the community fireworks display to the Rittner School District at the football field. And I know everybody is just as sad as she and I are that it was canceled this year because of the pandemic. It's always such a great display for the community. It's a proud tradition of the community, and all the planning that goes into it, it was really sad that that had to be put aside for a good reason. But it really is a sense of pride in the community, and I'm very happy to work with Erin again and Overland. And she and I also team with the cities of Breckenridge Hills, Edmondson, St. Anne, St. John, Woodson Terrace, Veneta Park, and Charlotte. And they all partnered together to bring the community fireworks display. But again, that would not happen without Erin's leadership, and I'm very, very proud of the work that she does. And I really want to thank Erin for all of her hard work, and I know that you do too. Do you want to talk a little bit about the display?
The lack of one that we had this year,
Right.
that will forever be changed going forward. To be honest, looking at next year, what it's going to entail, you'll probably see a lot of these. Trying to social distance, we're hoping that restrictions will loosen by then, so we're able to have a community event. I know looking at for this year, it was interesting of how we were not going to look like the Lake of the Ozarks, where everybody went down there and partied and came back with it. So I think going forward, I think we have a good group of organizers all together that sit down, and we have good brainstorming ideas and ways. We're already getting creative for special events in the community as restrictions start to loosen, of baby steps that we're able to take in small groups and then build on from there. We don't want to just kind of go out with a big bang. So as we go into next year, we'll probably have more planning meetings than we normally do. We've gotten so far with the past couple of years of just making small little minor tweaks that I think this year we're going to have some big major tweaks. But other than that, I look forward to it, and with your permission, I am here tonight to ask for planning purposes. We always try to go out at least 3 to 5 years, just so that we can have agreements with the fireworks companies and so forth. So since we were not able to do it this past year, we are asking for permission to do it on September 3rd in 2023 with a rainout date on September 4th in 2023 is what we're requesting for.
And the Board of Education has already approved the Labor Day celebration for 2021 and 2022.
Recommend we approve the use of Rittner High School for the community fireworks display on September 3rd, 2023 with a rainout date of September 4th, 2023.
I second.
Ruth motioned and Stacy seconded. Are there any other questions? I will call the vote. Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Albin?
Yes.
Ms. Greco?
Yes.
Ms. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
And I will vote yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Have a good night.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to 3.02, we have a resolution amendment.
So board members, 3.02, so the MSBA resolution was passed by the Board of Education back in May. And the resolution, the draft resolution from the MSBA was to allow some flexibility during this time of the pandemic. Certain policies that we have in place, it's mentioned that 30 hours of CPR training is one necessity for graduation. It's a statutory requirement. Because we have to be so flexible during this time of the pandemic, the resolution allows us that flexibility. The board passed it back in May. The language you're familiar with, but the language is included in board docs for you to review. Such things as allowing the implementation of emergency FMLA procedures for the benefit of staff and their families. Board policies and administrative procedures suspended to the extent that they conflict with new state and federal laws related to COVID-19. And also, such as the board expects the superintendent to keep the board informed of changes made pursuant to this resolution. The board reserves its authority over decisions related to the school year calendar. If you recall, we did have to make an amendment to the school year calendar, with the first day being the 31st of August as opposed to the 24th. Resolution will continue until the state of emergency in Missouri ends, as declared by the governor, or the board revokes the resolution in whole or in part. The recommendation this evening is to amend the approved resolution to include under number 3, to include the language, this includes moving through the phases of the learning plan, also known as the return to learning plan. We have a 3-phase plan currently. We are in all 3 phases of the return to learning plan. We're at phase 1 at the School for Early Childhood. We're in phase 2 for kindergarten students. We'll be in phase 2 for 1st through 3rd grade students starting on Monday. And we're in phase 3 for students in grades 4, 5, 6, 8, and then 9 to 12. Should the board choose to adopt the amended resolution that includes the ability for the superintendent to move through the phases of the learning plan while keeping the board informed in the process of doing so, if the board would approve the resolution, I would be working with the phase 2 Learning Committee that meets on Mondays. The next meeting of that group is October 19th to talk about potential movement among the various phases above and beyond where we are at this point. So the recommendation before you is to adopt the amended resolution that includes the language under number 3. It includes moving through the phases of the return to learning plan. The superintendent will keep the board informed of changes made pursuant to the resolution.
So moved.
I have a motion. Second. I have a second. Are there any questions?
Just wanted to say that at the Missouri conference, annual conference, this was talked about in the regional meeting. And they talked about that the board shouldn't really be making the motions to go from one phase to another, and it really should just be part of the superintendent's position and authority. And this was several different districts talked about that. I know, like tonight, somebody said that Parkway School Board voted unanimously last night to go ahead and do that, but I don't know if that's the way to go or not, but as I understand, if we approve this tonight, Chris, it will be your responsibility to decide when we're going to put the kids back in school, and I just want to know how everybody feels about that after, you know, hearing the different people that addressed the board tonight.
It's a thing where when we hire our superintendent and we entrust him with the day-to-day operations of the schools. We build a framework through discussions, through group discussions, through emails to our superintendent and others to let them know and let each other know where we are. When you call the school board to a meeting, that to me it slows down the process. Because you got to post it, you have to 24 hours notice, we have to bring everybody together, you got to make sure you have a quorum. If you can't meet on Tuesdays, you got to meet on Wednesdays, or Thursdays, or Saturday mornings, or Sunday at midnight, or when everybody can be together. We trust our superintendent. He's been here for 9 years as our superintendent. He's got high marks both from us and from others in the region. He's not one that makes decisions on a whim, studies them, he gets input from the senior staff, and we'll have this committee to help him out. After careful thought and calculations, I'm sure with everything else that his decisions will be as meticulously thought out and presented with data. It won't be something that he decides because of something on the 6 o'clock news. And with that, I put my trust in the superintendent. He has not failed us yet. And I think it would help the process along. He himself has told me many times, perhaps you have a committee, you should be listening to the committee and following their input. I believe at this time, not only should we be listening to this committee of how many, 23, 25, 30?
Right around 30.
30 now, which is a good cross-section of our staff, community members and such, but I think we should be listening to what our superintendent says as well. And with that, I would wholeheartedly be in favor of this one.
Are there any other comments?
Is, do we have a system that can ensure that we are still having discussions like this? My only worry is that with one person making, and I'm not digging at you obviously, but with one person making these decisions, how do we know that there will be enough representation for people based on, you know, how this affects them? You know, it affects students differently, it affects parents, and I don't know what the committee looks like, but I just want to make sure that everybody is being heard and that we're still having discussions like the ones we had today. Because your demographic does affect it, your ability status, and I worry that without these long discussions that we're having, that we could run into problems.
Yeah, so Kayla, that's a great question. So, so the ongoing conversations, the Phase 2 Learning Committee, there's been 3 meetings to this point. The group meets on Monday afternoons at 3:45. The next meeting is not this coming Monday, but the following Monday. And I'll tell you the committee is made up of teachers, support staff, parents. There's administrators on the group, on the committee as well. And we're working to add some additional members to make sure that our community is
fully represented in the committee. I'll tell you that from my perspective, the committee feedback that I've received to this point is similar to the feedback that was shared this evening, and also the feedback that I see in the region, which is people are split. You know, they are almost split right down the middle when it comes to really the question of, are kids going back, or are we going to stay fully virtual? You know, so in the committee there's been some good conversation, but I also feel like in that committee, you know, people are waiting just for that question to be answered, which is, when are we going back? And so part of the committee work is certainly looking at data. But in addition to looking at data, it's humanizing the work too, because we also have to make sure that when students do come back to in-person instruction, we've got high-quality teachers ready to support them in the classroom when they're there. And so I'm happy to say right now, with our kindergarten return, the first 2 days, kindergarten return, it's gone swimmingly. We've had Rittner teachers in the classrooms. They're getting off to a great start in building routines. I'm very confident that that's going to happen in grades 1 through 3. So we do look at transmission rates, we do look at positivity rates, but there's also the human side to make sure that we've got appropriate staffing ready for kids when they come. So I'll take your feedback into consideration. We've got 30 people on the committee right now. Cross-section of the community certainly could be more representative of all aspects of our community. I received that feedback from the NEA, and we worked to add 2 additional parents into the meeting last Monday. They were invited, they weren't able to attend, but we expect them to come to the next meeting. I believe it's a pretty good cross-section, which represents the broader community, which indicates there's a pretty significant split in what people believe about coming back to in-person or not. There was some good data that was shared tonight, and what you'll see out of the 23 districts in St. Louis County, there are districts that are moving forward very quickly to get students back to in-person. There are also a couple of our neighboring districts that have no plans to come back to in-person instruction at this point. So, ultimately, it's making the decision that you believe to be in the best interest of children. Can we continue to provide a high-quality virtual experience? Do we also realize that when you get down into the data, when you talk about, yes, so positivity rates, and when you talk about survival rates and so on, but some of the data also indicates that the death rate for certain populations in our community is twice what it is for other populations. That's other data that is certainly impactful that we have to be aware of as well. So I think I kind of went around your question a little bit, but I appreciate the challenge is to make sure the committee represents our community as a whole.
Dr. Kilbride, how many other districts have gone to this resolution?
So off the top of my head, I know that the Ladue School District passed this resolution about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, because I had been in the same class with Ruth when they talked about it. Because sometimes we have to think about ourselves being a board, and we have to stay out of the weeds and let the superintendent and the committees do their job too. And so if you get too much into the weeds, sometimes it can get off track really, really quickly.
And the thing, as a leader also, you always work towards building a consensus. Based on my experience thus far, it's going to be hard to build a consensus around this just because people are pretty closely locked into their positions and the mental models that are there. It's hard to change people's mental models around this. One of the reasons I think is because, there's questions around the data. There's questions around, is the data tainted? There's a number of things that not only are they medical, but they're also political. And I think that's what's causing people to get locked into their positions. And my real concern is that whichever way it is, if we get students back into school much more quickly as opposed to later versus if we stay virtual, I very much worry about my ability to build a consensus around that. And if you trust me to make a decision, I'll certainly do that. And we'll work in the best interest of children, and we'll work in the best interest of staff. But just know that it's hard to really form a consensus around this.
So I just wanted to add that with the whole question of it being about faith and Dr. Hilbrand is that his track record over the last years has shown that he's willing to take the time to listen to anybody. As a mom and as a sub, I've had to ask him when I didn't even really know who he was, and he made me comfortable right away to talk to him and listen to me. And he's willing to do that with anybody and everyone and take in all their accounts. So having a person like that make these decisions, I would personally feel comfortable with.
Thank you. Thank you.
The point, though, that was made tonight was every student, every day, that we're not giving the choice to the kids the families who want to come back to school. We're just saying it's only that short group that we already voted on, and the rest of the people are out there that want their kids in school, and we're not giving them that option. I thought that was a very pertinent and important point that was made, and I trust you. It's not a trust issue. It's the fact that our community, as it was said, wants us to be transparent and see, let them know what's going on. And now what we're doing is we're putting it on your shoulder like we're trying to cop out. And that's not what we're trying to do, I don't think.
No.
But at the same time, they want to know what's going on. And I feel like we don't have an answer for them.
So what I'm wondering.
That's public comment. We can't have it. Sorry.
Go ahead.
But I just kind of want to know what everybody else thinks about this on the board.
So for me, when this was first brought to me, it's no issues about trust or having faith.
Right.
Most definitely, if I didn't have trust or faith, I probably wouldn't even be wouldn't be sitting right here to be a part of this board. But there is concern about transparency, not just from parents in the community, but from staff in our community too. And I expressed that when we first laid out the plans about, I'm getting questions about, we're seeing this, but have the staff seen this? And I think one of the challenges that we run into is, like you have mentioned, there has to be a balance. There has to be we have to humanize this data that we're getting. We have to understand at the end of the day, we need to have quality people show up and be prepared, because there are the factors of how this affects individuals day to day and what their personal experiences have been. So the more transparent that we can be in the process, I think is beneficial. I do feel like we have received that feedback and have been more transparent in the process with our staff and families moving forward. There's still some opportunities. Some of that is just because default of we don't have a plan just yet for those secondary phases. So I can't give you information that I don't have a plan for. I know people are hearing what other people are doing, but as of right now, we just don't have set dates, and that's okay, because there's a plan surrounding why and what we're getting to. So I just want us to continue to go down that pathway of being transparent with all of our constituents in the community as much as possible, if we're going to approve this. That's all I'm asking.
Did the committee minutes go somewhere where everybody can read them, or?
So I push out the presentations and the notes to the committee itself. I'm thinking of the last set. I'll put those out to the board tomorrow in the Friday memo. So those were the meeting, the committee met this past Friday. The PowerPoint goes out, and then also the work product from the committee goes back out. I'll make sure it's in the Friday memo to the board tomorrow.
But I mean, can the community see it?
Right.
That's what they want to know what's going on. And just saying we have a committee that meets every week or every other week or whatever, they're not happy with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, at this point, it's not something that goes out to the broader community. It goes to the 30 members of the committee. With that feedback, I can take that feedback to the team and figure out, in terms of transparency, how we can do a better job of keeping the community up with the work of the committee.
Well, some kind of letter to the community, because we live in this electronic age, it'd be nothing really for us to send out in an email blast or whatever we use. A weekly update. It doesn't have to be the minutes of the community if you don't want to do that. It can be just here's where we are, here's what we're looking at, kind of thing, so that we have that communication. So either that or do it on the website or both. Just so everybody knows, we can go to a source and see this is what they're doing, whether if the community doesn't want to put their name on it or anything, it could be from the district itself. This is what we're doing, this is our thoughts, this is our plan. We don't have a plan, we're not organized around the plan, and we don't really have anything.
So we have the plan, what we don't have is the dates, right? So that's what, to that point, it's continuing to monitor data, and as I shared with the committee when we met this past Monday, that 15 to 19 age span around positivity rate and transmission was up in the 20s, 20% positive. It's come down significantly now to the point where it's in line with, as the data was shared earlier, it's in line with the 0 to 9. Right. What we see also with this data is this data can swing wildly in a period of 2 weeks. So what I shared with the committee, and it was one of the last statements I made, is looking for some consistency in that 15 to 19 age group to say that, we don't have all this oscillation in the data, all of these, these peaks and these valleys and these peaks and these valleys. We're looking for some level of consistency in positivity and transmission rates. We've had that at 0 to 9, which is what, generated my recommendation of starting to bring kids back. So we have the plan, we've got the various phases. What we don't have yet are the dates.
So Dr. Kilbright, I would say that with us, if we vote for this resolution, we're asking for just some more transparency to our community.
Okay. And I can follow up around the communication to the community of those notes from the Phase 2 committee. Can share what that could look like.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions?
Can students join the Phase 2?
Yeah, Kayla, at this point, we don't have a student on the Phase 2 committee. We don't at this point. There's no reason why not at this point. We just don't. So that could be an opportunity for us.
Okay. How would, because I know a lot of people that would probably be interested in that, how would they go about joining?
Work with me. Okay.
Mr. Lewis?
So my concern is always the long term. How long is this resolution? Let's say in the event you move on and we get another superintendent that takes your place. But we don't feel as comfortable with making these decisions, not just the Phase 2, just in general. So is this specific for the COVID, or is it centered around other decision-making process?
Yeah, no, so it's specific to COVID, and so the language is the resolution will continue until the state of emergency in Missouri ends. Okay. And so my ability to move amongst the phases when the state of emergency ends, my ability to do that would end. Or if the board would revoke this resolution. So either one of those two ways it would stop.
Keep in mind, anytime we're not comfortable with something like this, we bring it up to you for
Yeah, because I'm sitting here thinking, our decision-making process comes by way of the information that we're given from the superintendent and his team. So it's just a matter of, for me personally, just being able to trust the process, trust that our superintendent, his team, has the best interests of the children and the staff. I think sometimes that's getting lost. We hear a lot about the students. We hear a lot about the staff, but understanding as a board member, we're looking out for the whole. We're looking out for both the students and the staff, So I personally, being on this board now and understanding Dr. Kilbright, I trust his decision-making process because I too like how he involves all stakeholders. He's not one to just make the decision on his own, but he get everyone involved. And I really like the makeup. I love the makeup of the committee. Almost all stakeholders are represented, and I like the information that we're getting, the updates as to how the meetings, go. So I personally enjoy like.
Thank you.
feel confident that the decisions, right decisions will be made.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. I had a motion and a second. I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Ms. Greco?
Yes.
Ms. Glover Jones?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Ms. Greco?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to 3.03, we have Dr. LaChance talking to us about our custodian salary schedule. Good evening, Dr. LaChance.
Good evening, As you know, our Phase 2 plan involves increasing our custodial support in buildings to ensure disinfecting teams are in place to keep our surfaces disinfected. As we begin to onboard custodians, we also found a need to update our salary schedule. So I'm here tonight to recommend 2 additional groups to be considered. A Group A, which would be a part-time salary group with a minimum hourly rate at $12 at step 1 to a maximum rate of $18 per hour at step 16, as well as a Group B, which starts at a minimum hourly rate of $12.40 at step 1 and goes to a maximum hourly rate of $19.15 at step 16. I also want to point out that both of these groups would also be eligible for a 50-cent differential. One for if working an evening shift, and the second if they were leading, supervising 3 or more custodians. I included in the recommendation all 3 groups that we would have. Mr. Smith, I don't know if you can scroll down on the memo. So I wanted to include Group A, Group B, and Group C, and actually Group C was approved in the spring of last year by the board. Group C represents our daytime lead custodians in each building. So we would be looking to add additional staff to support cleanliness of our buildings at this time, and we needed some additional group structures and pay structures to do so. I also included in your board reports the comparisons that we were able to identify in the region. I'm open to any questions you may have, and otherwise asking for your approval of the updated salary schedules for custodians.
How many of these custodians are we looking to hire?
We're looking to hire 7 of the Group A custodians and 10 of the Group B custodians.
Okay, and how does this then interact with the contracted services?
So we would continue with our contracted services. This would be in addition to those contracted services to add disinfecting during the day. As students and staff are in session, we would have continuous disinfecting going on during the day, as well as some evening custodians to do even deeper cleaning that is needed in the evening.
So this is above and beyond our current contracted package, and so there was an opportunity to go for a separate add-on with our contractor. We made the option, or we decided to go with keeping this in-house with Rittner people instead.
Well, it sounds like a good step forward. We're getting Rittner people in our buildings again.
So I guess,
and I think that's a good step forward because we got people that just aren't the contracted hired guns to come in, leave, and go home to wherever they live. Now we are hiring our people, as it were, to take care of our kids. And I think our kids, our students, our staff, our faculty. And, part of that is in doing so you build that team. And if you're part of the Rittner team, we expect, a lot out of you because you're part of that team and we're proud of that. And with that, I think this is tremendous. This is what we need. And I can see then that, adding a few more to solve our problem of cleaning our buildings completely.
And there is no break. So there is a disinfection team that's in place now. It's being handled by our transportation department. A number of the recommendations are already working in the district, but it's approving an updated salary schedule for the work for them moving forward.
I have a question. So earlier says we made the lead supervising of 3 or more custodians. Is that, so we have a lead custodian that works the day shift?
So we have custodians that work the day shift, and we call them lead custodians. They don't currently supervise 3 or more. The district terminology tradition has been to consider them the lead custodian because they lead the majority of the daytime efforts going on in the building, and they're the main contact for the principal. There is one lead at the high school that does supervise 3 or more day custodians, but other than that, lead is the general term that we use for our full-time day custodians at our buildings that do have the lion's share of responsibility when it comes to the custodial responsibilities.
So help me understand, it says Group A and B will also be eligible for the following 50-cent differential. You have evening shift and then lead supervising. So we're saying a 50-cent differential for someone that worked the evening shift in addition to someone that supervises 3 or more.
So if we have, we are intending for the Group B folks that we hire to work in the evening. They would, in addition to the salary schedule posed, they would get 50 cents in addition to that. At this point, we don't have specific plans for them to also supervise to get that lead, but we wanted to make sure, because that clause is in there in our current custodial salary schedule, that we maintained it for the other groups if and when that was ever a need.
Are there any other questions? If there are no other questions, I'm just looking for a motion. Oh, great. My motion's not on. Is there a motion on that?
Recommended custodian salary schedule be updated to include the following employment groups: Group A, part-time, minimum hourly rate is $12 at step 1, maximum hourly rate is $18 per hour at step 16. Group B, minimum hourly rate is $12.40 at step 1, maximum hourly rate is $19.15 at step 16. Do I have to say anything about the next one?
We would want to make sure that they have that option for them.
Okay, so Group A and B will also be eligible for the following 50-cent differentials for evening shifts and or lead supervising 3+ custodians.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Ms. Greco?
Sure.
Ms. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
Oh, yeah, you're up next. So moving on to 3.04, we also have our personnel recommendations from Dr. LaChance also.
Board members, I'm here to present numbers 1 through 37 for your approval, and I'm open to any questions or comments you may have.
Number 5, that was the new position. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the new position is a full-time position, and there is funds within the the grant to cover a full-time position and needs for the full-time position. So the position is moving from a part-time clerk role to a full-time office professional role.
The virtual academy teachers, they're all grade levels, right?
Those that we're presenting tonight are the additional grade levels for kindergarten through third grade.
Okay. But I mean, overall, doesn't the academy take all grade levels?
K through 8.
K through 8, okay.
So they may eventually have to do those other grade levels?
So when we would move to a phase 2 at the 4th through 8th grade, we would come back with additional RVA teachers as needed. Remember, at that point, we've also allowed parents to opt into Virtual Academy, which then, in this case, increased our need for Virtual Academy teachers.
So, you know, it's all speculation, but based on data from K to 3, it's about 40% have opted for full virtual. And so what that would look like at 4th and 5th, we think that may be an additional 90 or so students that would be signing up for RVA when the window would be open. At the middle school, right now there's 432 students that have signed up for RVA. 40% of our middle school students would be about 600. So we think it would be about an additional 160 students, which would be a little bit more than one additional middle school team. And as Dr. Rich and Dr. Peterson talked about, they've done a pretty good job of seamlessly incorporating teachers from both the schools. And an RVA teacher might have students from Haken Middle School in their classroom. Some of these teachers that you see on the list, they might have students from Kratz and Booter. You know, there's just a lot of combination, and it's all based on parent caregiver choice, just what they want for their children. So we would expect that we would come back to you with additional RVA teachers when we get to that point.
Thank you.
What is the difference between numbers 1 through 4 and numbers 7 through 11?
So 1 through 4 are new staff members, and then 7 through 11, those are current staff members, and those are actually current bus drivers that are also going to be working on the, between their driving, they'll be working with the team.
Move to accept recommendations 1 through 37 as presented.
I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? I will call the vote. Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Ms. Greco?
Yes.
Ms. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Thank you, Dr. LaChance.
Thank you, board members.
So we're going to go on to 3.05, and it's board member comments. Would you guys be okay if I asked you if you have any comments? Can you go up there so we can make sure people hear? Or do you want me to pass you the microphone? Either way.
I don't have any.
Does anybody have any?
I got music.
You have a few things? Can I pass you the microphone? I know you. I do. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. First of all, I am very proud to say that my 3-year-old granddaughter is now enjoying Rittner's tradition at our earliest school. She is in love with her teacher, and she just has had a ball going to school this week. Lily is at our preschool. She is going all day, and she just has enjoyed her teacher virtually, and the first day was just the craziest, greatest thing in her whole life, she told me, at 3 years old. I hope things stay at that level with her. She loves it. She was everything about it was like Christmas Day, and you got everything you wanted. She walked into school, and it was just everything for her. So, one satisfied customer, along with her mom and dad. And me too. We've talked a lot, we've had a lot of people go back and forth. And as we know, and as our staff knows, I'm too bad everybody else isn't here to know, we not only think about our students, all 7,000 of them, we think about our 900 faculty members. We think about the grandparents that might be affected. We think about the neighbors that might interact with our kids as they leave the bus and walk home. We have to think about our community. Our community reaches into 9 cities. And it might be an easy thing. Let's just make this happen, But Rittner's board, Rittner has had a grand tradition, a very good tradition of not making snap decisions that others might want to and then regret later on. When we make a decision, we make sure it's the right decision. We make sure that's the path we want to take. So even though it might seem that we're slow to react, and sometimes, I want to just let's go forward, let's move. We have too many people that depend on us, even though they're not part of the crowd, even though they don't come here. The 88-year-old grandmother, great-grandmother, that wants to see their kids at the grandkids or something at a play, and she can't. Well, it's because we want the best for her as well. So I understand we get emails every day from parents or teachers or everything crying out to us, hey, let's move, let's go. Well, when we do, we know it's the right thing at the right time. And it's because we care. This board cares more than probably any other board we've had for a very long time. We care. But at the same time, we look at the data. So there's a good balance here amongst this group. A little thing, if you saw me messing with my phone earlier tonight, and I've got the okay and everything, so it's not against the, talking to Penny. Penny is doing better. She was sitting up having her lunch in a nice recliner chair that they put in your room. I would look for her stay in the hospital. If anybody doesn't know, Penny DeGarden, one of our board members, is tested positive for COVID-19. And she is in Mercy Hospital. But I think she's doing well. And it sounds like she's, however short that road might be, it sounds like she's on a very good short road to recovery and being home with her family and friends. So that's another positive. As cautious as we are with everything else, still keep Penny and everybody else in your thoughts, in your prayers, and hope for good outcomes. But it's just that time where we gotta say, we get it, we hear you. From every aspect of our faculty, we hear you. From our staff, we hear you. From our community, we hear you. And we don't make decisions lightly. Last week, during that vote, there were questions asked for over an hour and a half because everybody wanted to know and make sure that we were doing the right thing. And I'm glad we did. The vote didn't go the way I would have wanted it to, but I respect the fact that the people on this board care. Okay? And I think as a group, we collaboratively made a good decision. So with that, I think, as we move forward, we know that we are a group that will do so. And that's everything I have.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Thomas. I'd like to also extend our prayers and well wishes to Penny. I know that she'll recover. She's a fighter. And I hope also to her entire family too. And I would like to echo that, you know, we hear everybody and we're thankful for everybody sending in their emails, sending in their letters, talking to us as we, you know, are at the grocery store or walking down the street. So we do hear you. We do understand. We do know. But you have to understand that also that we know everybody's side. So I thank you to this board because I know it's a tough road every day, and this is probably something that we never thought when we were running we'd ever have to handle. So thank you for the work that you guys do. I know it's not easy. And with that,
Madam President, I move that we approve consent agenda items 4.01 through 4.06 as presented.
I disagree. There's a problem with 4.06.
With who?
4.06?
The minutes on the 22nd of September, when we took the vote to go through grades 1 through 3 and 4 through 5, it reads the vote was 4-3 by roll call, and it was 3-4. Did not pass.
Okay, I can amend that. I wasn't here and I was playing the tape back and I was working on the notes that were taken and stuff. So I will fix those.
The the yeas and the nays are correct. It's just not recorded correctly as far as the result. That needs to be changed.
okay. So we'll have that amended. So is that as amended?
Sure.
I have the motion as amended. I just need a second.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Ms. Greco?
Yes.
Ms. Glover-Jones?
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Moving on to 5.01.
I'd like to make a motion to reconvene in closed session for State Statute 610021 for the purpose of a discussion of real estate and personnel agenda items.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to reconvene in closed session. I'll call the vote. Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Dr. Alvin?
Yes.
Ms. Greco?